Hello and welcome to fCinebriety, and 2 bananas short of a dog shit Sunday. I am Craig Woods.
I'm James Hamilton, and it's those fucking dada fucks, right? And our sub-fucks are up top probably saying God knows what to whoever the fuck about us. Fuck this Freaky Friday shit.
It's not even close to Freaky Friday.
I am Alan Todd, and when I first got into the game, laser beams weren't even a thing. I put laser beams on the map.
And we are, of course, here today to talk more Doom Patrol, specifically Season 3, Episodes 8 and 9. Before we dive into this, chaps, just broad strokes, how are we feeling about these 2 episodes? I'll have an extra note on this question to ask James in just a second.
I thought they were bloody great.
Yeah.
Absolutely pissed myself laughing. Sorry, this is for an international audience. I urinated my undergarments.
I feel like you made it less understandable with the correction.
Laughing. Both these episodes, in particular one moment in episode 9 that I couldn't breathe for a while because I was laughing so hard at it. I think Craig knows what it is because I believe I sent you a message regarding it and then I didn't realise you hadn't actually watched the episode yet.
Yeah.
And I feel like a spoilering dick for that. But
No, there's no way I would have guessed what the scenario was just from your 2 words. But as soon as it happened, I was like, oh, that's what James meant. Yeah, a sheer delight.
As usual, the high standard was maintained for both episodes. Yeah, as usual, Doom Patrol does not disappoint.
Yeah, it's another strong couple of episodes. It's really fire into what I think is going to be a delightful finale, and this season has not disappointed at all. The very minor quibbles I've had are infinitesimal, I believe is the word. But speaking of the finale, somebody here amongst the 3 of us has already seen said finale, Mr. James Hamilton.
I don't know who you're talking about.
If that is your real name, Bart Simpson.
Yeah, for the benefit of the listeners, we are recording this episode on the 11th of November, meaning that the Doom Patrol finale aired yesterday, and I, like a millennial who has no idea about delayed gratification, had to watch it immediately. I'm not a millennial, I'm Gen X. So.
There is an unwritten rule, but a rule nonetheless in fCinebriety that we don't watch ahead before we've watched new episodes of current shows. But James here just fired on in, which is why, like the Stonecutters, you now must attach to yourself the Stone of Shame.
Shame. Shame. Shame. Shame.
I can give you guys a heads up. A spoiler-free, it's good.
Nice.
It's good.
I'm intrigued. I guess maybe I'll stick with it for one more episode now.
Yeah, we're sticking with this Doom Patrol.
Alright then, let's dive on in. Doom Patrol, Season 3, Episode 8, Subconscious Patrol. It was directed by Rebecca Rodriguez, who, incidentally, is the sister of Robert Rodriguez.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Famed director of Spy Kids.
The very same, yeah. Yeah, she also directed Penultimate Patrol in Season 1, and she directs both of these episodes that we're talking about, so good job, Rebecca. I think you're alright at this. I think you should stick at it, hen.
She has directed 2 penultimate season episodes.
A brace of Penultimates Patrol. It was written by Tanya Steele, whose other credits on Doom Patrol include such classics as Sex Patrol and Wax Patrol. So, none too shabby, I would say, that record.
Yeah.
She's got herself pedigree for outrageous episodes.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. This one is pretty far gone, but it's one of those great examples of what the show does from time to time, where, I say from time to time, like it doesn't do it on almost every episode, but conjures all these madcap scenarios and all these zany set pieces, but grounds them all in some of the best character moments and some of the best character progression in the show, and we see a lot of that in this episode. Incidentally, actually, before we get into the detail of the episode, I did notice after episode 7 particularly, and I noticed it in the weeks preceding, but particularly after episode 7, I sometimes check out what people are saying about the show in between episodes, and a lot of people are really complaining about this season.
What?
Oh, Craig, have you been on fuckingidiots.com again?
Is that your code name for Reddit?
Pretty much.
But there's a lot of people complaining that, here's the complaint I've seen a lot in different variations, that a lot of people seem to feel that the show is sort of spinning its wheels in the sense that it continually shows these characters battling their inner demons, and a lot of people have read that as essentially being that there's no progression in the show. To which I have to say, what fucking show are you watching?
Yeah.
Because the inner turmoil of the characters is the progression. That's the point. And one of the things that's great about this show is that, yes, it is sort of subverting superhero tropes, but it's not doing it in an arch way. It's doing it in a way that's actually very true to the concept that the show is working with, which is that this is a kind of dysfunctional family of very broken people. Anybody who's ever been through any kind of therapy will tell you that this is what it's like. You do feel like you're sometimes doing the same thing over and over again, but that's just because there's so many battles and sort of, that war against whatever it is you're fighting inside. It's not an easy process, and quite often it's one of the most maddening and frustrating things about going through any kind of therapy, is that it can feel like you're going nowhere. But as you complete each step, you realise, no, I've actually come quite far. This time last year, I couldn't have talked about such and such a thing. I didn't realise such and such a thing about myself. But it doesn't mean the battle's over, And what this show is doing, and we kind of talked about it before, that the Therapy Patrol episodes are really the ones where the major plot progression takes place, because the characters are the plot. Everything else that happens in the show is sort of like a skeleton of ideas, a sort of skeletal framework that they can hang ideas on, hang wild concepts on. But the real meat and bones of the plot progression is always inside the characters themselves, and that's always been the case in season 1. So when I read people saying this kind of stuff, I'm just like, I think maybe this show just isn't for you.
Yeah.
Because the things you're pointing out as flaws are actually what the show is doing absolutely right and doing at its best.
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is that away.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm sure the Titans subreddit is fucking welcoming people.
Right, aye.
Go see that shit.
But there's a lot of people saying but towards the end of the 3rd season, they're still not a proper superhero team. It's like, that's not the point of the show. And furthermore, that's not even the point of Doom Patrol, or at least, like as I've said before, I can't comment on anything post about the early 90s, but certainly the era that I read Doom Patrol in, like the Paul Kupperberg, Grant Morrison era, that wasn't really the point of Doom Patrol either. They were sort of superheroes by accident at the best of times. And I feel like the show is doing a great job of staying true to that and making it relevant to the kind of the situation I just described with the characters' inner turmoil and inner journeys.
Obviously, we'll get to it, but episode 9, when Rita calls a team meeting, and it's like, arm cannon, nope. Robot strength.
Yeah.
So good.
This episode 8 particularly, is like a real Therapy Patrol redux. And I love it when the show does this, because these are the points in the show where you know you're getting the real important stuff. This is where the deep shit happens. And to see so many people frustrated with this episode afterwards, I was just like, man, that's really disheartening. The only thing I was thinking was, I'm glad that season 4 has already been announced, because I would be feeling pretty downbeat if I'd read all this and it had not yet been renewed. I'd be like, fucking hell, are we ever going to get this show back? But
well, James can maybe tell us, maybe like the next episode is full on WandaVision finale, like
full on Justice League.
It's just throwing CGI blobs at each other for 45 minutes.
All those folk who were jumping shit from Reddit are back on.
They all join the military.
They all join the military. Nice. The CIA are approving scripts for season 4 as we speak. Chris Pratt is now like one of the main characters in season 4.
Chris Pratt's the voice of every character.
Voice and face of every character.
That is some dada shit.
I think the best way to tackle this episode is character by character, because the characters are kind of isolated from each other for a lot of this, and I think we'll tackle the Rita and the subs. This is what I've called the subconscious characters, and in their own separate thing.
Do you know what? Before we carry on, I'm going to make this joke and get it out of the way for the Thirst Patrol moment. When Rita says I'm not a sub, I was like, aw.
Oh, God.
All right. I get the hint. I will get you a glass of water.
That is your worst comment yet. Right, I'm going to change the subs. I'm getting rid of that.
Don't forget to sub and like.
Yes, mistress.
I'm going to change it to subcons. Rita and the subcons, which is a a lesser-known Simon Furman-written Transformers spin-off for Marvel UK. It's a hip reference. Anyway, so Rita and the subcons, let's deal with them first. Okay, so actually, here's a thing I will say before we get into the meat and bones of this particularly. I love this episode, but, and there is a but, the butts are loose. This butt is loose. A wee bit disappointed by what the eternal flagellation actually turned out to be. But the only reason I'm disappointed is because...
You wanted a big fart joke?
In Grant Morrison's run, the eternal flagellation, although it's not called that, the sort of equivalent of that is that in the Brotherhood of Dada, as they are in the comics, are really concerned with deconditioning people from all of the indoctrination, all the societal conditioning that they've had, and really setting people's minds free. And I kind of thought that's where the show was going, and it didn't do that. Instead, it was everybody's going to swap places with their subconscious self, which is a much tamer idea. So I was a wee bit disappointed in that. I mean, the way it unfolds is all cool, and it's all very entertaining, but it doesn't quite have the teeth of the idea I was expecting.
Yeah, weak sauce compared to what you just described, because I didn't know like it was in the Grant Morrison run or what it was, if it was.
Funnily enough, as a side note to this quickly, have either of you ever read Grant Morrison's The Invisibles?
Yeah.
The Invisibles is kind of like what if the Brotherhood of Dada were the good guys. And they go full on with the idea that, to an outsider's perspective who wants to preserve the current order, they would effectively be terrorists. But in Grant Morrison's world, they're the good guys. And they're effectively working to destabilise every form of indoctrination, including the structure of language and, you know, all of that all the way to the bone. I was kind of hoping the Sisterhood of Dada would do a similar thing, but yeah, maybe that was a bit ambitious. That aside, Rita gathers all the subcons in the big lounge room, and I do enjoy Kay's energy here. Diane Guerrero as Kay, so good. She is so childlike and just, it's absolutely, it's just another fantastic transformation. And this is the first time we've really seen her converse as Kay, because we knew the only thing we saw her do before this was steal a bike. It's a completely different childlike performance from the likes of Baby Doll, which was a much more exaggerated, kind of cartoonish version of a child, where this feels genuinely like an 8-year-old girl in amongst a room full of adults.
Yep, trying her first beer, courtesy of Cliff.
Yeah, it's pretty spectacular. Diane as Kay, when Larry's subcon enters, as she says, "Everybody say hi, Larry," like she's still on the Sesame Street show, is just so cool. So Rita begins to explain to them all that she and the sister are responsible for swapping everyone with their subconscious selves, and the idea being that no one can hide who they really are. And there's a lot of rationalisation by Rita here as well. Like, she's really trying to excuse her own actions to herself. There's a lot of that going on here. And April Bowlby, I think, does a great job of delivering that. On the one hand, Rita being very fierce and very single-minded, but at the same time, that part of her knowing that this isn't all quite above board. But I did enjoy the line nonetheless. Once she's done explaining that, she then adds, "But it's art, so stick a pipe in it." And she insists it's art, so therefore pretentious, but not necessarily evil.
Not necessarily evil.
And so there's this flashback story that occurs throughout the subcon meeting. And so we get Rita's flashback to spying on Madame Rouge, as she becomes known, when Laura DeMille is recruited by the Brotherhood of Evil in 1949. There's lots to enjoy here. I did have some questions, though, about how exactly Rita was able to enter the Brotherhood of Evil's place. I mean, I get that she blobbed her way through the vents and whatnot, but I don't know. I needed more explanation of the logistics there. Whatever.
It's a bit like how Monsieur Mala and the Brain show up outside of the place where she arrives in the time machine, and it's just
True.
like, it just happens.
I mean,
go with it.
Yeah, you do have to suspend your disbelief. I mean, let's there's a lot of zaniness in this show. It's fine. I'm not going to get hung up on it. So we learn here that the Brain had originally attempted to invent the Doom Patrol before Niles Calder could, but Niles got there ahead of the Brain. Why the Brain wants to create the Doom Patrol, I don't know. Why is he thinks that's so fantastic? But there you go. This does pretty much match up, by the way, with the Silver Age version of the Brotherhood of Evil. This is basically what they were like. With a lot of the stuff in here, the way the Brain and Monsieur Mala are portrayed is very much just like they were. It's like being cut out of an Arnold Drake story from the 60s. Which is really fun because the version of Madame Rouge that Michelle Gomez is playing is, on the other hand, a completely postmodern version of that character. So there's a nice clash of styles going on there.
Is that kind of why they also have, like, she's not a part of it? Like, when she's talking to them later on, like, do you think it's maybe she's like, I was a member, and they're like, for about a minute, like, you know.
Yeah.
I absolutely want a spin-off of just the Brain and Monsieur Mala, because they're rapidly becoming two of my favorite
I mean,
characters.
I love that. I was so excited the first time they turned up, and every time they're on screen is just a pure delight.
The blender, just
because
dynamite.
those characters, funnily enough, like their journey throughout the comics, like when I started reading Doom Patrol as a young kid in the 80s during Paul Kupperberg's run, they were not present because I think Paul Kupperberg didn't really know how to handle those characters in the 80s. He thought they're a bit silly. What did Grant Morrison do?
Hold my beer.
Brought them back and really hyped up all of the Silver Age-ness, and they really made it work in a fantastic way. And I feel like that's exactly what the show is doing. It's channeling into exactly that same energy. It's kind of posing the idea that what if the ridiculousness of Silver Age villains who are just evil for the sake of evil, what if you take that and place it in the context of superheroes now exist in a world as such that, you know, people look back at it and go, well, that was all a bit silly. Why were superheroes and supervillains like that in the 40s and 50s? And so when we see the later versions of Monsieur Mala particularly just cannot be fucked with this shit anymore. He has got no patience whatsoever. And the Brain is very much, well, we'll talk more about where the Brain is at a little bit later, but yeah, he's got a whole other set of concerns now that have got nothing to do with per se have nothing to do with being evil for evil's sake, albeit he is ultimately still committing evil deeds. I do have a question mark about this meeting though, and I do feel like it's got to be, and I'm wary of saying anything like this, James, I don't want you to betray anything about what you might have seen in the finale, but the question mark I've got here is, Laura seems to have been sacked from the Bureau because of Niles' intervention, and we've seen none of Niles in this flashback at all, and we've seen nothing about what would cause Niles to write that letter that we saw earlier in the season, which makes me think at some point are we going to see Niles in the finale to square that hole? It makes sense to me if they did, because I do feel like that's missing information. Awkwardness, James. See what you've done by watching the finale.
Just going to put so many tumbleweed sound effects there.
Can neither confirm nor deny.
But speaking of evil, both Monsieur Mala and the Brain remark on Michelle Gomez's accent, which I feel now is confirmation that Carver and Co. are definitely poking fun at wee Scots.
Bastards. It's exactly the same as racism.
Literally the worst form of racism one has ever endured.
The accent. Yeah, being fuck Niles Calder.
So yeah, my big question mark there is, why is she so against Niles? Because we've seen nothing about her relationship with Niles here at all. Pin in that.
But also, the reveal of the time machine that he's made, I was just like, tiny white mate, Craig called it.
It's Jonas's time machine from Dark. Yeah, I saw that one coming.
Imagine in Dark, that's what the time machine was like.
Imagine Dark, but replace Jonas with Rita.
And the mad old scientist with a brain in a fucking tube.
Every time they crawled through the tunnel, it narrated what they were doing.
It's the crossover we need.
You just see Monsieur Mala and Klaus. That would be fucking amazing. Like, just like neither one of them can be fucked with anything anymore.
So cutting back to Rita and the subcons in present day, as she's relaying all this information, we get General Tony, who we'll say more about later when we deal with the individual characters, but this is Vic's subconscious self. He remarks when he's rhyming off, so Brotherhood of Evil, Sisterhood of Dada, I don't know, it all sounds like a bad comic book. Which is one of those on-the-nose lines that I was like, you knew that would get a laugh, that line, and I almost hate myself for laughing at it. But there's a lot of energy, more of this energy from Rita here as this progresses, of her mixing what is basically straight up a revenge shot for her, but trying to sell it as self-defense to the others, because the idea that, you know, the Brain essentially wants to destroy them, but they seem so unconcerned about all of this, with Cliff being the most vocal about it.
Yeah, who knew their subconscious selves didn't give a fuck? I guess anyone who watches the show. Rita should have seen this coming.
Yeah, really, this was not the best plan on her part.
Rita's obviously on Reddit going, this show sucks. Fuck this show.
Okay, tell her that the lesson of the day is you're on your own. And so the subcons essentially choose eternal flagellation over more group therapy. And who can blame them at this point? But in further flashbacks in 1949, we get this really affecting scene in the abandoned Dada party pad, where Rouge turns up wondering if Rita will be there, and of course Rita is there. And again, this is one of the things I love about this show, is that it can really insert... This is, for me, this is like a Professor X and Magneto moment. Like, it had all that weight to it, and yet it's set in this most zany of episodes. But you feel every part of the emotional weight in this scene. You really feel Rita's sense of betrayal. The way that Rita calls out Madame Rouge on her desire for power. Shout out to April Bowlby, she's really going for it in this scene. And I know we've sort of mentioned this before in the podcast, but it's sort of sinful that this is the kind of scene that will go completely unnoticed by the Emmys and whatnot.
Yeah.
Whereas if this was in a more quote unquote serious show, this is exactly the kind of performance that people say, "Oh, that's dynamite."
Yeah,
you really feel every moment of this.
Yeah, April Bowlby for your consideration, Academy.
Yeah, totally. And it's such a slug in the gut when Michelle Gomez just leans back after April Bowlby's big speech and says, "Well, that was bracing." It's like, oh, fuck you, Madame Rouge, you're the worst. And she goes on to sort of poke fun at the whole idea of them ever using Dada as a weapon. She has the line that art is bullshit. I really feel Rita in this moment where she says, go on.
Rita says, art saved my life. And it's right in the fucking heart, man, when she says that.
Yeah, and it's 100% unaffected. And it's like, I think for a lot of us who are either creative or just have a great appreciation for the creative arts, we've all kind of been there. It can do that. It has that power. And for someone like Madame Rouge to just piss all over this after being the most manipulative person on earth, and more about that in a second, man, it is absolutely crushing. Art saved my life and you destroyed it, Rita says. And Madame Rouge attempts to make the case here that Rita's just as bad as she is. And you could say this is a wee bit prescient, because we'll comment more on this over these next two episodes. But Rita's journey is complicated and problematic.
And Bendy.
We get Bendy to use her powers here, and I'm really loving the Bendy powers. It's amazing getting to see Rita do this shit. But Rouge, man, underhanded move by Rouge by turning into Malcolm here and saying "kill me again." It's like, fucking, this is horrible. That really disturbed me, that bit. I hated that bit. She knows the only way she can leave right now is as Malcolm, because you can tell. I think in this moment you can tell she's afraid of what Rita might do, and it's a signal to the audience as well, is that this character that we all thought was lovable and a bit daffy, she's suddenly become quite dangerous.
Yep.
And Madame Rouge certainly recognises it, and so she covers her ass here by adopting Malcolm's likeness, knowing that will completely paralyse Rita in this moment.
Yeah, Rita's gone from not weapon to weapon.
Right, yes, exactly. The note I made here, and it's one that I accentuate further on as we go on, but Rita and Madame Rouge both have massive shades of a character they both claim to hate, and that is Niles Calder. Rita becomes significantly more Niles-esque over the next episode and a half, and Madame Rouge is basically just doing what Niles did. They're both kind of weird, dark reflections of Niles, and that we're still rooting for them, and they're still Rita certainly is ostensibly still a good guy, quote unquote, but she's doing some very, very questionable things and being very manipulative along the way, and we'll deal with that later. But yeah, I do feel like there's definite mirroring going on here. I suppose it's screenwriting 101. It is just good storytelling to have those kind of echoes in the characters' actions. But yeah, it's just so brilliantly done.
Also, Niles obviously knew that, because, way back at the start of the season, Niles entrusts her with all this power and authority.
He recognised in her this capacity for coldness. Yeah, definitely.
That, and he maybe met her in 1940, whatever.
I did wonder about that, and I've been wondering about that since Rita went back in time. Surely they would have to bump into each other at one point, but maybe not. I don't know.
I've also wondered if at any point during her tenure as a member of the Sisterhood of Dada, if anyone's gone, you know who you look like? You look exactly like famous actress Rita Farr.
That's another thing I did think. When was Rita supposed to have become famous? Because she became a blob in the 50s, and presumably she'd already been a high-profile actress for a few years. Yeah, that one is a bit weird. Whatever, Doom Patrol. So yeah, back in present day, the subcons definitely very nervous about this whole flagellation carry-on as Rita is trying to guide them outside into the fog, and they're having none of it, basically. My favourite part, though, it's the sight of the Toad Bonnet B bicycle. Is what discourages them all from going any further, and they're like, nah, I'm good. It's like, you're the one on the mission. And Rita says nothing back there but truth and self-loathing, to which subconscious Cliff replies, and beer. Flips the bird.
I love they brought the bike back.
Yes.
Shout out to General Tony's fort building skills here, because this is a killer fort.
He's reinforced it.
Reinforced the nylon with cotton or whatever it was. Yeah, that's amazing. That's a great piece of production design. Hats off to whoever was responsible for that. The Cliff with his family-sized snacks, and that's when he tries to give Kay the beer. When she spits out, he's like, more for me. But it's a great wee exchange here, and it's kind of what kicks off the whole therapy patrol amongst the subcons, with Larry staring out the window and General Tony asking you even guard your subconscious kind of thing, and subconscious Larry's like, maybe understanding each other will help us move forward, and General Tony tries to push him on it, but subconscious Larry, despite having that idea, saying no, fuck off, it's none of your business. But I enjoy General Tony's, alright, well, let's go into the fort, we'll sort it out. Hey, we've got snacks. But meanwhile, back in 1949 at the ant farm. Okay, so shout out to all of the fantastic expletives that April Bowlby has spat out this season, because it's been absolutely superb. But when she goes to look at the time machine with the intention of stealing it, and remembering what Madame Ruse said to her, and then as if continuing the argument out loud, fuck me, fuck you, takes the ship. And then we get that narration from Shipley the ship, so that was confirmed to us in this episode that Shipley is the voice of the ship. Shipley describes it as with vengeance in her heart, and that this is a tragedy. And Rita has a fantastic line. She says, tough shit on a popsicle stick, Shipley. But this is another example where it is very, very convenient storytelling, and there's a line in the next episode that calls this out, which I did appreciate, where of course Rita now just regains all of her memories that she lost previously, and she gets to hold on to the new ones, because that's the way the story has to work. Accept it, basically. And so now she has both her thirst for revenge and her all of her memories of who she was, and she also has the knowledge that she went through this actual love affair that she had never had previously, and this whole life that she'd never had, and how all of that was robbed from her. Ah, poor Rita. But also, why Rita? And Shipley lets us know that she will pursue Madame Ruse to the ends of time. And we get the confirmation here that Rita did indeed trap herself. But she basically ensures that the Doom Patrol get killed by Samuelson's death ray. Wow, you really did that, huh?
That's where it becomes like, oh, she has gone full Niles here in it, like just absolutely manipulating folk and murdering them for her own ends.
Yeah, it's pretty grim. But more on that later. Back in the subconscious therapy patrol, they're all starting to agree around this theme that life is somehow about duty. It can be a duty to others, or it can even be a duty to yourself. And this is what eventually leads them all to their different breakthroughs.
The child in me, though, whenever Americans say duty, like, here's duty, so...
duty. Yeah. And there's this whole thing about fatherhood between Larry and Cliff, how that sort of, again, it's that sort of dark mirror of each other. And then, of course, Vic also has a complicated relationship with his own father. And then, of course, Kay reminds us, can we please not talk about fathers? It's like, oh, God. And she goes on to say, fuck fatherhood. No one ever honoured their duty to me. Yeah, it's a lot of complicated stuff going on there. And General Tony makes a great point here that Vic honoured his father more than he did himself in his life, and I'm going to have a lot to say about Vic's journey, because that's one of my favourite ones in these next two episodes. I really love what they've done with him. But yeah, this is a big moment for subconscious Vic. But yeah, Cliff and Larry have that thing about, the parents who fucked up. Both of them have their own versions of that story. Mm-hmm. And subconscious Cliff really freaking out. It's interesting that Cliff, even as his subconscious form, is still the most resistant. It's like, how deep does this guy's denial go? And when he says to Kay, of all the people inside you, we get the one who can't flip my fat ass out of here. It's great shit. Might as well say it here. I was going to save it for when we were talking about that moment where Brendan Fraser meets Riley Shanahan. But Brendan Fraser is so great in this episode, man. Fucking hell, he is so good.
Double Fraser is always good.
It's incredible. And see it all the way through the therapy scenes here in the fort. Holy shit, man. How you can watch this and not say that guy is such a great actor. It's fucking hell, he's so good. His delivery of every line is so naturalistic. And it's a bizarre thing to think about, because once again we are in the, bear in mind later on he's in the company of a Muppet and a robot version of himself, but he's still got that gravitas when he delivers all that stuff at the end where he says, the party's got to end sometime, you've got another chance, don't fuck it up. He's so human and so real and so raw. I'm like, God bless you, Brendan. You're a fucking great actor, my man.
Yeah.
Fuck you. Larry was holding hands with himself, and I thought it was really nice.
But here, before all that, in this part, he does get that. Where he tells them basically he realises that he's dying, that the Parkinson's is probably going to end up killing him. And he says, after all the amazing things, I'm now going to do the most ordinary thing. I'm going to die before your very eyes. It's like, Jesus Christ. That line really hit me hard. Really did. I was like, fucking hell, Fraser, you are great.
I love that he got to deliver that line not through just the voice, but to be on screen and say these lines like, ah.
Yeah, it was fantastic he got the chance to do this. It was really great. And even his whole monologue about remembering where Cliff came from, about how he basically came from nothing, race cars were his escape, and suddenly felt for the first time in his life like he was special. There's a lot of real truth in that stuff. Like, you see a lot of famous people who came from nothing. A lot of them are the people who end up going on these kind of self-destructive descents, because these, it's the first time they've ever felt validated in their life, and because it's to such a hyper real extent, it's like, how do you deal with that mentally? How do you deal with it if you're completely unprepared? And man, all of that just felt so human and so real. And so it felt absolutely right that Brendan Fraser should be delivering all that stuff as Brendan Fraser. So happy we got that stuff.
It's absolutely no surprise that Scorsese is all over him right now. This is a guy that can fucking act and deserves all of the praise that he's been denied.
Aye. What I was going to say, absolutely robbed of how many years of a career, and we've been robbed of his presence on screen, whether it's big or small, for too long, man. All because of some absolute fucking scumbag. Yeah,
it's fucking grim. One of our best. Absolutely one of the best. Fucking love him so much. So glad he's in this show, playing this fantastic character. And getting to this scene just made me so happy, except it also made me extremely distressed and wanting to crawl into a corner and just bawl my eyes out, but still happy as fuck that we got it. So I think we'll reconvene with the subcons after we've dealt with all the characters individually, just briefly then. I mentioned, let's talk about Vic, because he really gets a great journey in these two episodes. And likewise, Joy Van Wade really knocks it out the fucking park in these episodes. He's so good. I'm really happy that we got to see him be a lot more real as Vic this season than we've seen him before, because holy shit, that boy can act. He's really, really good.
The scene where his dad comes out of the hospital.
Yeah, amazing. Really, really hard-hitting stuff. And once again, it's the sorcery this show can do, that it can do all this crazy shit, and you still get a scene like that could easily stand side by side with any of the best written quote-unquote serious dramas of the current era, So we get a flashback of when he was in the toy store, and he's essentially looking for a superhero action figure that looks like him.
Hold on. Are you trying to shoehorn your SJW politics into my TV shows now?
I'm sorry to inform you that the show did that. I will admit, the one part about the scene that bothered me was I thought the shop assistant's dialogue was a wee bit much, because I don't know how a shop assistant in his 30s would have so much wherewithal to say, nobody buys black action figures. I don't see a shop assistant ever saying that. But again, who knows if this is an accurate memory? It could just be a hyper-real version of the memory. But other than that, it was a great scene. I keep forgetting the name of the actor who plays Silas. He's great though, and I really loved him in this scene, because he's equal parts stern, but you can tell he is afraid. And that becomes key to his character. We later realise when we start to see that it was his fear for his son's safety and for his son's future that essentially made him turn his own son into a soldier, into this sort of artificial mechanical soldier, both literally and figuratively. And you see that journey starting here. Yeah, has a line to Vic where he says, "Now's not the time to be a coward," and it's like, oh man, it's heartbreaking because, yeah, I get that you want to protect your son, but you're also literally robbing him of his childhood in this moment, because you're essentially telling him that he should not expect to be able to be a child the way a child can just relax and be a child. And you can understand it. It's one of those things. It's complicated. And being a bunch of white dudes here talking about this, we have to throw in the usual caveat that we've never experienced this and we cannot imagine what it's like.
Sorry, I thought you were going to say we're obviously experts on the subject and therefore can talk about it more.
Right, naturally. Yeah.
Well, I mean, to be fair, we're Scottish, so we've obviously experienced racism all our lives.
We've experienced Jeremy Carver's xenophobia. But yeah, I mean, it's obviously we're familiar enough in today's climate with, I think all of us of our generation and younger have become increasingly aware of these subjects, and it's not the same as having experienced it, but you begin to understand it and just the sheer weight of it and just how that really does rob young black children of their childhoods. Essentially, like, they have to learn to grow up before white children do, because they have to be made aware that there are consequences just for being a kid. And it is fucking tragic, and it makes what Silas does here both infuriating but also entirely understandable. And I do think the choice of General Tony here is an ingenious masterstroke of writing, because there's so much great symbolism wrapped up in that action figure. Because Silas is sort of saying, well, you can't play with superheroes because that's too childish a thing, basically. And you can't be a child like other children, i.e. white children, because that's not going to be possible for you. But you can still play with a toy, but be like General Tony is the line he has. If you think about what General Tony is, he's not a superhero, but he's heroic within a certain cultural paradigm, and it's that same cultural paradigm that we mentioned, James, way back when we were talking about Lovecraft Country, where there was that scene in one of the episodes where Letty was having the house party, and Tick turns up dressed up in his military uniform.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's the one black man that a lot of white racists in the US will respect.
Yep.
Because he's willing to die for their bullshit ideology.
Thank you for your service.
And
exactly.
It's so utterly tragic and horrific, but at the same time, there is this thread of that subconscious version of Vic that adopts that likeness is still striving to be his own hero, even underneath all that problematic symbolism. There's so much complicated shit going on here. It's really great writing. I thought it was a really great choice. Another question I had about this scene, though. This shop they're in, it's called Toy Parade, and the shop assistant says in his walkie-talkie, "Can I get such and such down to the toy aisle?" What? Yeah. The toy aisle in the toy shop? Something doesn't add up.
I'm going to blame it on the memory thing.
Almost like he's remembering something from his childhood.
So why wasn't there snappy writing in his fucking childhood memories?
God damn it, childhood memories, be more accurate.
Yeah, when you start some shit in B&Q and you're like, can I get store security down to the DIY aisle? And then you could just run fucking wild because they've got no idea where you are.
Yeah. So General Tony and Vic essentially swap places, and Vic is now the action figure, which is a nice little sort of micro version of what he feels his dad has tried to make him into. So yeah, all very cool. And I do like that we get the Dada birds appearing in each of these to whisk the subconscious version away.
With their creepy ass faces.
They are kind of terrifying, to be fair.
Although the Larry one is fucking adorable, I'm just going to say that.
Oh, that's true, yeah. Aye. And later, like, the scenes of young Vic in his bedroom, like, telling the action figure, "I have to be strong like you, Tony." Fucking hell, it's horrible, man. And Vic in the action figure box telling me, "You were scared, it's okay to be a child, and please hear me." Aye. It's like, jeez,
right in the fields.
We keep talking about it, but the dialogue and everything is as good as anything you'll get in your quote-unquote prestige TV, your golden age of television, but it's being delivered by
an action figure.
By Vic in a wee action figure box.
Yeah, so totally. Good. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Suck on that, Mayor of Easttown.
That's what Mayor of Easttown was definitely missing. So eventually all the individual characters do meet up again, so I think what we'll do is we'll deal them individually up to the point that they meet up. So we'll move on to Cliff.
Oh.
So we get the great Cliff moment. What the fuck?
what I've written it down here as is a what the fuck off.
I really appreciated the exchange of dialogue where real Brendan Fraser says, "I'm sorry to say you look worse than I thought," to which Riley Shanahan says, "Well, it pains me to see this, but you look fucking awesome."
Yep.
And I'm quite right. I'm glad Brendan Fraser gets somebody to tell him that on screen. Yeah, I love that moisturiser. So it points him towards where this party is taking place, where our old pal Bump from season 1 is fighting Cliff in, whilst Brendan Fraser gets whisked off by the dada bird. So Cliff goes inside, gradually remembering what happened to you in this party.
I didn't know what to expect in here, but it turned
Same.
out way darker than
Right,
I
exactly.
thought it was going to be.
I was really expecting that something must have went wrong at the party, but in actual fact it was sort of the opposite of that, even though, the correct answer is that it did go wrong. The fact he was at the party was the wrong thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, the way that unfolded, it treated, again, this show just knows how to treat the serious subjects with just the right weight. Because when the stripper delivers that information, there's a little girl alone in that Camaro outside, and you get that dark zoom in to Cliff's eyes, and he's like, no. And it's like, holy shit, that's horrible. Because who knows how long she was out there? Jesus Christ, yeah, Cliff.
Well, when he delivers the kind of monologue later on, like actual Brendan Fraser, and he says like that was a regular thing, and you're like, oh, for fuck's sake, like just Father of the Year.
Yeah. And bear in mind, this is also a scene where it gets spliced up with, there's still all the hilarity in the dialogue with Cliff insulting Bump to his face and Bump not hearing any of it because it's not part of the memory. Bump's giving it, you're my best goddamn friend, so we got something special for you. And he's like, well, I'm not going anywhere, you white fucking fuck up. So eventually, after that grim realization, he sees his escape route. So then the quiz conjures up the old
time tunnel.
Francis Picapia time tunnel spiral, yeah. So let's move on to Jane.
Let's take a trip down to Underground Avenue.
Underground Avenue, yeah. Part of the Children's Television Workshop. What kind of Captain Kangaroo Jim Henson devilry is this?
I don't know about you guys, but as soon as she opened her mouth to say something, I was expecting a simple what the fuck or some expletive laced thing. But the fact that she just says the word Jim Henson devilry.
Yeah, I have to confess, as soon as she said that line, I had to pause it because I was fucking killing myself, man.
It's the thick of it level fucking swearing.
Why is it just this simple combination of a Muppet with Diane Guerrero's sweary voice is just hilarious? But again, it's like earlier what we were saying about the what was the line I mentioned earlier that was such an obvious, oh yeah, that sounds like a bad comic book. This show should not be allowed to get away with stuff like that. But I was like, no, fucking fair play, that's hilarious. Shout out to whoever designed these puppets because they are incredible.
Great. Yeah. Pretty Polly, fucking hell, amazing.
What I loved though was that each of the puppets was instantly recognisable as each of the personalities. It's like, oh, there's Dr. Harrison, oh, it's Pretty Polly. And it's like the choice of colours was like Pretty Polly was green, Dr. Harrison was blue,
Hammerhead was kind of purplish.
Yes, the colours just seemed to all work. It was just absolutely perfect. And like the voice acting and with the correlation of the movements of the puppets was just so great. Because the voice actors, obviously it's the usual cast that we see for the personas, but how well matched up they were with just the choreography of the puppets' movements was just incredibly good. And I loved that because they are Muppets, their emotions are that bit more exaggerated than usual. Like Pretty Polly, especially, like she was really doing a lot of gasping. Like you see on Sesame Street, and I was like, this is absolutely fantastic. But yeah, Harry the Lamb, who apparently can talk now in puppet form. Jane asks, "Who the fuck are you?" And I love it's Hammerhead has to give Jane the pep talk about how this all works. And as soon as Jane asks a question, Hammerhead says, "Well, do I have a PhD in subconscious shit? How the fuck should I know?"
She's a well-adjusted adult.
No.
Oh, it's just a total delight from start to finish. And when Kay is actually there, human Kay is there at the start. I say, does anyone know what trauma is? When she gets taken away by the dada bird, it's a great moment, the way they all just... She's gone.
Also, wouldn't Diane Guerrero just make a fucking brilliant kids' TV host surrounded by puppets? Because, oh man, she's just adorable.
Shit.
Yeah. I would be surprised if she's never been on Sesame Street. If not, she needs to get on it.
Yeah.
She would be perfect on it.
Hi kids, today we're going to fucking talk about fucking trauma.
But the puppets then proceed to have this really deep, troubled conversation about what the fuck is going on with Kay, but it's in that same hyperkinetic, exaggerated Muppet talk. And it's like, this is genius, man. It's like, what if Kay got better? She wouldn't do that, would she? And Pretty Polly's nose falls off. It's like, that's just fucking fantastic. Which, the great thing about that is, Jane puts it back on and she's got the opportunity to then say, I fixed it. I can fix this. And the rest of them are like, no, you can't. And Harry the Lamb, none of you can fix. Harry the Lamb is super sinister here. None of you can fix this. I'm the only one she tells the real feelings to. Yeah, so it starts off with Jane punching off his ear. And it just becomes total carnage.
Fucking Muppet beatdown.
I know I'm not going to listen to a fucking stuffed animal. Tell me what Kay does or doesn't want.
The one thing I will say where I thought they missed a trick with this, though, was I thought it would have been doubly hilarious is after they started just beating up Harry the Lamb. I keep saying Larry as well. Larry
I
fucking
said it
Lamb.
as well.
Not to be confused with Larry Lamb. Once they've started beating up on Harry the Lamb, I think it would have been way funnier if they'd cut to one of the other characters. Like, say we got a scene with Vic, and then we cut back, and they're still beating the shit out of Harry, and then it cuts to Cliff, and then cuts back, and they're still hammering away on Harry. They missed a trick there. But I think it's Pretty Polly of all the Muppets when she picks up part of Harry, goes, fucking amazing. It's just the pure savagery coming out of the personas is incredible. But yeah, they are desperate not to be bamboozled here.
Yeah.
They're all feeling what Dr. Harrison warned about, which is they're all losing their power, they're all losing their influence over Kay. And it does seem like from where the end of this episode goes, that Jane was wrong and Dr. Harrison was right. Although, the one thing that makes me doubt that, however, is that Dr. Harrison does have that line after Jane leaves when Cliff and Larry turn up, where the other puppets say, Jane is gone again, and Dr. Harrison says, no, not again, never again, like she's got some kind of plan. I don't know, I mentioned previously that Dr. Harrison's power is persuasion, that maybe somehow she was wielding that over the other personas. I might have a theory about where that's going towards the end of the episode, which if it's completely wrong, you can laugh at, James. But let's for the moment move on to Larry. Not Harry, but Larry. So Larry, his subconscious is hanging about on his wedding day. And my big first note on this, and it's a really important note, guys, so important I wrote it in block capitals, and it reads as follows. Fuck's sake, Matt Bomer, save some handsome for the rest of us, you dick.
Chiseled motherfucker.
It's fucking ridiculous. It should be illegal.
So fucking handsome.
Makes me sick. Anyway, so past Larry is hanging about, not wanting to go out there and commit the deed and get married to his wife. And the crux of this memory is that his mum comes in and basically guilt trips him into doing it. This is quite harrowing, this scene, the way it unfolds.
I personally feel it's nice that one of them doesn't have father issues and it's a mother issue instead.
Right, that's true, that's true. Spread the dysfunction. I think what makes this one particularly affecting is that Larry's mother is not ostensibly even a bad person. She's just somebody who, I guess similar to Silas in some ways, at least in this respect, she's somebody who's just scared. And she actually just wants, in her own twisted way, she actually does want the best for her son, but unfortunately it's sort of overridden by this same thing that, this idea that shame could be cast upon the family. She's obviously part of a religious community for whom that is a big deal.
The best for her is that he's married to a woman and has the nuclear family and yada yada yada.
Yeah, and she's doing her best to convince herself that what she knows about Larry isn't true, or that it can somehow be dispelled. So it's not just that she's trying to convince him. You can see clearly in this scene she's trying to convince herself of the same thing. It's that mix of really uncomfortable and also really tragic. I love Matt Bomer's voice performance as bandaged Larry when he's trying to communicate with her and realises she can't hear him.
the fact that she can't hear him, but that even if she could, she probably wouldn't. It's like just doubly effective.
Well, yeah, that's a good point. I mean, even one does suspect, even if Larry had tried to be honest back in the 1950, whenever it was, this probably was unlikely to go any other way. So yeah, it's like, what do you do? What do you do in this situation? This is not how you fix it.
You wait for a big robot man with a time tunnel to appear and
that's the only remedy for this situation. Instant cure for homophobic culture. How to destabilize that shit. Dada! It solved all problems.
Ta-da!
Larry really has some powerful lines here where he says to her, you suffocated your own son, and I've always been invisible to you, which I did quite like the nod there, that obviously Larry looks a bit like the Invisible Man. Yeah, all that shit was great, and Matt Bomer, great act, both as handsome motherfucker Matt Bomer and voice Matt Bomer. He's doing the Lord's work here, although not in his mother's eye.
the Dark Lord.
Can I just take this opportunity to mention a line that I think we've overlooked quite close at the start of the episode when we're seeing the effect of the eternal flagellation happening, and someone in the news is saying,
oh yes,
the weatherman is a buffalo with tattoos.
That made me think of BoJack Horseman for some reason. Remember that guy Diane hooks up with?
It took me way too long to realise he was a Chicago Bull. Like, I was like, the big yak guy, the buffalo thing. Like,
So, fortunately for Larry, along comes the cure for the situation.
Yeah, along comes the Dada time tunnel. And Cliff is here to fuck this Freaky Friday shit. It's great that the voice acting in both these parts is so good. It's just a quick follow up by Matt Bomer, the way he says, that's not even close to Freaky Friday, but sure, yeah, let's go. I always love that. That's one of my favourite kinds of comedy, when even in a most absurd situation a character still has the time to take that moment and go, yeah, that's not the reference, but I just love shit like that.
It makes no sense.
Larry telling Cliff about Freaky Friday.
Well, he's had a lot of time these past few decades to sit and watch old movies. So they have to collect Jane first. There's another great bit of voiceover dialogue here. When Cliff crashes in and says, which one of you felt fucks this Jane? To which Jane replies, you metal bitch.
That's Jane.
That's Jane. And he's kind of teased her, saying, oh, it's like holding a baby. You're like a little baby. Are you sure there isn't somebody's hand up your asshole? It's like, how has this show got time to make these absolute zingers when it's telling a story about a group of troubled, dysfunctional characters meeting up with their subconscious selves to really mull over their own trauma? How does it get time to do this?
Right, they've got time to do that, and then other shows like fucking Daredevil season 3 or whatever, like fucking goes off in mad fucking tangents and shit, and you're just like, you could have condensed that shit down, whereas this one is like got a completely insane sprawling story, and they're like fucking zing.
Daredevil season 3 is also a good example of a show that just gets so dour. That third season is so bleak.
Joyless.
And not even in an interesting way. It's just like, really, did we need this? Just make it stop, please.
Nay, Daredevil.
And then we get this kind of psychedelic great space coaster sequence. Amazing.
In the stripper cake car. Amazing.
What other show gives you this combination of elements? So yeah, and then the rest of the episode is full-on therapy patrol involving literally all the main cast, including the body doubles. Matthew Zuck, Riley Shanahan are there with their Brendan Fraser, Matt Bomer equivalents, Muppet Jane and Diane Guerrero as Kay, and Vic with General Tony. I actually forgot to look up who the actor is who plays General Tony. I'm sure I've seen him before. He's familiar.
He's been in a bunch of stuff.
To see this whole cast on screen together finally, and for them to actually have engineered it in a way that it makes thematic and plot sense. What a treat, man. This was so great. As harrowing as all this is, I almost wish it was longer, just because I really wanted to savour all that cast being on screen together. Also, it really hammered home to me just how great Matthew Zuck and Riley Shanahan are at aping their equivalents like body language. Like Matthew Zuck particularly, when the two of them are when Matthew Zuck and Matt Bomer are looking at each other and they're sort of even in like kind of mirror reflected poses, it's like, that is so great. You can believe that's the same person.
Oh, sorry, the actor is Richard Gant.
There you go. Thank you.
Richard Gant, also known for Rocky V, Daddy Day Camp.
Rocky 5 is what I'm thinking of.
Yep, and Nutty Professor 2, The Clumps.
Rocky 5, I do remember him in that, I think.
He's in a film called Men of a Certain Age with Andre Braugher.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah, that one. Yeah, no.
Do love me some Andre Braugher, he's great.
Yep, this is completely unrelated to this, but I've been rewatching Homicide.
Is this an episode of fCinebriety TV?
Yep, I'm on season 3 at the moment, and it's good because Sarah's only seen up to a certain point in season 3 of Homicide, and I'm like, there's so much stuff's going to happen. And you don't know about
I've only seen the first 2 seasons.
Oh, I'm glad I didn't say the stuff that happened. It's fucking amazing. It's so good.
Anyway, so mega therapy ensues, and the dialogue between each of these characters is so great. The performances, can't say enough good things about them. But some really great character stuff in here when Matt Bomer says to Matthew Zuck, you like those bandages because it's an excuse to keep people away. You think you're not worthy of love. And Larry realising, I have a duty to myself. It's like, oh, bless you, Larry. Finally, you've realised. Man. Oh, and when Matt Bomer says, make it worth what I'm going through, because you realise his subconscious is going through that moment eternally. And it's like, whew, holy shit. The weight of this earns every bit of Cliff's comment, that was beautiful. To which he quickly segues to, anyway, show's over. An attempt to deflect. Brendan Fraser, let's kiss his ass again. Subconscious Cliff doesn't want to spill the shit. He doesn't want to do this, but he's like, hey, that thing between the two Larrys was nice. Every day he leaves his daughter in the car to do, some blow, hang out with strippers, because fatherhood didn't make him feel special. He comes back and he looks at Clara and he feels nothing. This is his memory from back in the day. But doing all this wild shit fuels him for another week or so of stomaching dirty diapers until he's on the next race or fucking the next stripper, And Brendan Fraser delivering all this stuff. There's a way of writing this kind of stuff that would be, if you weren't as accomplished a writer, it would be very difficult to have a character say all this stuff and for the viewer not to come away going, well, that guy's just a piece of shit. But it's not only written well, but again, Brendan Fraser's performance is so great because he's so full of self-recrimination in his delivery of it. And most of that is in his performance. It's not in the dialogue. The dialogue is literally just describing what Cliff used to do. But Brendan Fraser's delivery is like, oh God, you feel every weight of the regret and the sorrow and the guilt. Man, so great. Give that guy some Emmys, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, all the fucking Emmys.
Says you're tripping balls on Parky meds. I don't know why the abbreviation of Parkinson's to Parky always makes me laugh, but it does. It's like you've got a second chance, but instead you're doing the same shit and you're just killing us, so is it worth it? And then the two Cliffs just end their part with an exchange of fuck yous. Which, again, simultaneously hilarious and also tragic. Vic, yeah, he's spinning out a bit. He leaves the fort. Leaves the safety of the fort. Tony follows him because you never leave a man behind. And Tony asks him the old question of who protects us. And Tony's going over all this, how Vic went from being a child to a soldier essentially immediately under his dad's guidance. Being sure never to make a mistake and essentially losing his childhood in the process. And I do really enjoy this dialogue here where he says, you can go ahead and do some wrong things, make some strong choices. And I like that the show was clever enough to have Vic say, I was already on that path, which we already knew he was. I like that they put that detail in. It's not just his subconscious revealing itself to in this moment. We already knew he was on that journey. They've done Vic's character really well this season. I've really been impressed with the progress they made with that character. Because as much as he was always cool, he was a bit static in the first two seasons. And this season they've made so much progress with him. He's become such a bigger, more interesting character. And Joy Van Wade, like I say, he's really knocking it out of the park. It's great to see that kid flex his acting chops. He's really great.
It's great to see him do some acting without the cyborg stuff on as well.
Yeah.
This is going to say, he flexes everything else in the next episode, isn't it? It's like,
I was going to say, when first time seen him without all the gear on, I was like, I hadn't realised he was as ripped as that. Fucking hell, man.
He's not skipping body day.
But yeah, when he has that line to General Tony as well, it's like, I didn't even want you. I didn't want a soldier. I was just a fucking kid. It's like, man, we're getting to the core of it. It's good stuff. And then we get to what I think is the most harrowing one. It's subconscious Jane telling Muppet Jane that Jane essentially causes Kay more trauma, and this is something that Jane has been trying to deny. And I think it's clever the way they've written this, because back in season 2, and I know we talked about it earlier on our coverage, that Jane does have that moment in season 2 where she does say aloud, what happens when Kay gets better, because I don't want to disappear. And it's been quite interesting this season that on the surface she's been saying she wants to help Kay, but as much as I think Dr. Harrison's been being an arsehole, she has been right about the fact that Jane is not being realistic about the idea that she can somehow stick around and still help Kay heal, when in actual fact there inevitably comes a point where Jane's presence is an obstacle. And that's essentially what Kay tells her here. And I think the delivery of the line she gives here, which is really harsh, I wish you would die, but it's only harsh in the sense that you have to remember Kay's, still mentally a 7-8-year-old girl. This is the kind of thing a child would say in this situation. And so it felt truthful. And Jane's still in Muppet mode. She starts sort of breaking down, going, no, no, no. And I really felt every ounce of it, despite the fact this is a Muppet delivering this. And I was like, God damn you, show.
The Muppet's making you cry. It's not what you're expecting.
I kind of wish they'd had some little fabric Muppet tears, but that would have totally undermined it.
Even a Muppet can cry, to paraphrase Roy Thomas's Avengers from back in the day. So Kay vanishes back into the underground, and Muppet Jane reverts to actual Jane, and we get the harrowing scene here of Jane just destroying the fort in absolute colossal grief, and there's the obvious symbolism of destroying the safety of the fort. All that stuff is so great. Diane Guerrero obviously still great, and everything here is just so perfect. I'm like, I could say it to death about this show, but it juggles so many fucking things, man, and it manages to do what is, again, this is the kind of thing you would see in like a critically acclaimed independent movie, and said lead actor or actress would win all the awards, and it would be, there would always be a scene like this. I seem to always remember, like, back in the 90s, there was always 2 scenes that you saw in every independent drama. One was the protagonist in the shower with her head bowed, and then the other was them doing something like this, smashing up their apartment or some shit, and this is Jane's moment of that, and it's like, Diane Guerrero absolutely nails it, but you won't hear anybody talk about this when it comes to Emmy nominations. And then all the characters essentially have to go back to where they were after this and deal with the shit that they hadn't been dealing with, and the fog lifts, everything goes essentially back to normal, and I guess everybody in the world now has to deal with the aftermath of everyone in the world seeing their subconscious self, which, again, and it's a cool idea, it's just not quite what I was hoping for, but it's okay.
The eternal flagellation lasted 1 episode.
Yeah, but that's fine. I don't necessarily mind that it lasted 1 episode. But,
the short-ass flagellation.
I think Dadists, they have a strange definition of certain words, and it seems like eternal, they were pretty loose with it. Yeah. Clara telling Cliff, don't know what's going on with you, Dad, but it's not working anymore. And Cliff saying, I know. Sobs patrol. Back in the underground. I mean, again, Jane's still in denial at this point, saying, I know things were said, but we can work past it. It's like, Jane, you're not listening. I feel you're not listening, Jane. And all the others are gone. Larry reunites with his parasite pal. So he's decided he's going to have one last bash at fatherhood to see if he can knock it out of the park this time. And then we get the aforementioned Vic waking from surgery, looking ripped as fuck, and no longer cyborg except in nanotech form. He's back in nanotech form. So yeah, that happened. And then the kicker for this episode is Rita, remember her? She's still around. At the shoreline at the lake, meeting up with her nemesis, Madame Rouge. It was another great episode. I'm not going to repeat myself, but all the great things and the tiny quibbles I had. Adding it all up, I'm calling this one 8 5s out of 9.
I'm going to go ahead and give Doom Patrol Season 3, Episode 8, Subconscious Patrol, 9 5s out of 9.
You heard it here first.
I'm going to kind of echo these sentiments and say it is like the longest fart out of all the farts. Like that's how good that episode was. Like,
well, I'm glad you specified that was good.
1 eternal flatulation out of 1.
To be clear, you're talking about emitting a fart and not being on the receiving end of a fart.
I mean, I thought that went without saying, but I mean, if it has to be spelt out for the audience, then yeah.
You haven't spent time in Reddit like I have.
Perfectly cromulent, what I said.
Alright, chaps, so that wraps up that episode. We've got one more to cover on this podcast, but before we do that, shall we take a brief break at the bar? Whose round is it? Alan's.
It's always yours,
It's
Craig.
never been Alan's.
Well, we'll be right back after these short messages.
What y'all drinking tonight?
Well, Craig, it's going to come as no surprise to any of the assembled listeners or yourselves, but once again with the slavery apologist master.
Needle drop.
I'm drinking the good kind of slavery apologists, Green King's East Coast
Specify
IPA.
once again.
If you're listening, representatives from Green King, just hit us back with all these requests for a sponsorship.
I don't know how you can say no to a catchy phrase like the good kind of slavery apologist.
It's got the word good in
it. Meanwhile, I'm drinking Camino del Angel, which is a brand of wine I'm fond of. Normally I get either the Malbec or the Pinot Noir, and I thought I'd got the Malbec, but I realised before we started recording that of all the bottles I bought, so I've made myself sound like a total alcoholic. I do bulk buy sometimes, right? But one of the bottles gave me is actually a Camino del Angel fucking Merlot. So tonight I'm drinking Merlot, and I'm like, my inner Paul Giamatti from Sideways is fucking livid.
Exactly what I'd gone through my head.
But it's Merlot, but it's nice as Merlot goes.
I believe it's pronounced Merlot.
This is a Merlot point in your drinking.
Hey-oh.
And that's your Merlot.
What about yourself, Mr. Todd?
I was drinking some of the finest Pepsi Max, but I'm back on the water.
A good vintage of Pepsi Max.
Oh yeah.
So before we batter on into Season 3, Episode 9 of Doom Patrol, and we're on a break here, just briefly, have any of you guys been watching or listening to or reading or otherwise imbibing culturally anything of note that you want to mention real quick?
I mean, to be honest, TV-wise, we're at that point in the year now where my television intake consists mostly of The Great British Bake Off and MasterChef The Professionals, but I did finish Sweet Home, which I was talking about last episode.
Oh yeah.
Fantastic. Absolutely brilliant. Highly recommended. We'll talk more about it on our end of year show because it's 100% making my top 10s.
Teaser.
Yeah. And listening wise, Jessie Lanza released a new song.
How different is it from her usual catalogue?
Well, Craig, you'd be surprised actually because it sounds exactly like Jessie Lanza.
Well, to quote one of Jane's personas in the Muppet version of The Underground.
Oh, it's Jessie being Jessie, and it's amazing, and I love her.
Is this an episode of Jessie and Jessie?
And watching-wise, film-wise, I saw that Dune they have nowadays, the new one.
I've heard that's a thing.
I went into it with a giant David Lynch-sized chip in my shoulder, determined to probably not like it. And you know what? It was good. I enjoyed it.
You were forced to eat that chip.
I ate that David Lynch-sized chip after leaving it on a table for a month to see how many ants it would attract.
But is Timothy Chamomile tea anywhere near as sexy a Paul Atreides as Kyle MacLachlan?
Oh, absolutely not.
I'll be honest though, right, and this might be a hot take, and if anybody listening takes offence to this, I'll apologise in advance for Albert. That's a Twin Peaks reference. But honestly, I feel like anybody who fancies Timothy Chalamet is a paedophile, because that guy still looks about 12.
It's funny you say that, because I had to look up and see how old he was, because I was like, that young actor is really good. And I looked up, was like, there's no fucking way. I think he's 26. I was like, no chance. He is about 12.
He bathes in the tears of small children, obviously.
So,
he should have played Baron Harkonnen.
Aquaman's good in it. Baron Harkonnen wasn't that hot on. I prefer David Lynch's comedic, grotesque Baron Harkonnen. I feel like Denis Villeneuve had just watched Apocalypse Now before he started.
I saw a still of it, and that's exactly what I thought of. It reminded me totally of Brando. Is it a Skarsgård that plays him?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Skellen?
Stellan.
Scale,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Or as if autocorrect has his name, Stellar Skateboard.
Great name. One thing I didn't really enjoy about the new Dune, and this is going to segue slightly into press fCinebriety real quick, is that Dr. Yui,
Oh,
Yeah.
yes,
played
of course.
by the now sadly deceased Dean Stockwell in David Lynch's version.
Rest in power, you suave fuck. One of the greats.
Ziggy says there's like an 89% chance that is definitely the case.
Of that whole squad, like there was a whole bunch of those actors who came up around the same time. Dean Stockwell, Dennis Hopper, Harry Dean Stanton, and they all had very similar sorts of careers, and they all worked with David Lynch. And now they're all dead.
No connection, like we're not saying David Lynch murdered.
I'm not saying
all
David
these
Lynch
actors.
is guilty. I'm also not saying he's not. No.
Yeah.
If David Lynch's lawyers are listening, I promise I'll do more TM. I'll TM my way out of this lawsuit.
His character is obviously played by someone else in the new Dune. I can't think off the top of my head who it is, but they're kind of a non-character. So at the point when, and by the way, spoilers for Dune, which I feel ridiculous saying because the book's been out for more than 50 years,
Spoiler for a 55-year-old book.
with 2 movie adaptations and a mini-series adaptation, but Dr. Yui betrays the Atreides family, right?
Calm down, Pretty Polly.
And in the book and in David Lynch's version, the character is there a lot more, so when the betrayal happens, it's like, oh, it's a shock. But he's just kind of in the background, and then at the point when he's like, oh, sorry, I told the Harkonnens they've got my wife, have this tooth that you'll spit out poison. It's like,
Oh, yes, yes.
I'm sorry, who are you? You betrayed me? Do you work for me?
To which he replies, the tooth. The tooth. Wait, that part was always one of the most surreal aspects of David Lynch's Dune, because I do remember on maybe the 3 or 4 times I've ever watched that movie, each time I'm like, what the fuck is going on? I don't understand. Like, honestly, that's a scene you could put in any David Lynch movie. It feels like it would sit comfortably alongside all the other shit going on.
Other than that, thought it was pretty good.
The one bit that really annoyed me in the film, like just the only thing that actually really annoyed me was what's his chops? Cable
Josh Brolin.
ran from the Goonies.
Oh yeah, Thanos.
Yeah, Thanos. When he is talking to Tiny Chandelier about the Harkonnens, and it's just like that entire bit was just like, when I seen that in the trailer, I was like, right, okay, that's taken out of context or something that's going to make more sense or not look as completely fucking ridiculous and unnatural in the actual film. But no, it was pretty much exactly as it was in the trailer, and it was just like, alright, calm down, you fucking nutcase. I mean, you like, aye, okay. Like, you were supposed to be really scaring this guy and telling him how bad the Harkonnens were, but you just came across as a fucking weirdo. Like,
To be fair, if an overindulgent space opera is not the place for an established actor to overact, where is?
But yeah, would recommend.
Would you actually recommend it to me? Are you sure about that?
I think so. Zendaya's in it, so yeah.
I think you need to rethink this.
is Zendaya in it though? Like,
Well, she's in it for about 5 minutes.
I'm sorry to be the pedantic one here, but her name is actually pronounced Zendaya.
I think I would know, Craig. I've seen Dune.
It's pronounced Shani.
But yeah, if you've ever wanted to see Zendaya being in a sci-fi Calvin Klein advert, Dune is the film for you, because all her scenes are just her standing in the desert looking every inch like a 90s Calvin Klein advert and not saying anything. That's it.
or saying like 1 or 2 breathy lines, like just kind of like. That was the thing that really annoyed me about that film, is like you've got Zendaya in it and you don't fucking use her.
Melange by Arrakis.
You know who did direct a whole bunch of 90s Calvin Klein adverts?
Big D.
Yes. Big David Lynch.
Oh really?
Yeah, he was short a few bob in the 90s and
did a whole bunch of them. Starring all kinds of big stars as well.
yeah, like Helena Christensen and shit, right? I'm pretty sure David Lynch laid the blueprint for the sort of hilarious perfume adverts we have nowadays.
I feel like the standard for those sort of adverts is like a weak parody of David Lynch. That's sort of the template for those ads.
Did David Lynch direct the video for Blue Hotel or Wicked Games? Or
Wicked
yes,
Game.
he directed the video for Wicked.
Really? I was being stupid, but he actually did.
No, he did direct the video for Wicked.
Because obviously Wicked Game features heavily
In Wild at
Wild
Heart.
at Heart, yeah. So there you go. David Lynch's legacy, perfume adverts and Wicked Game.
Believe it or not, listeners, this is not a David Lynch podcast.
Where were we? Oh yeah, the other thing that annoyed me about Dune was the big sandworm reveal was dark as fuck.
Oh, as dark as got a light. Sorry, I changed my mind. This is a David Lynch podcast.
Like, not dark as in like terrifying and disturbing, just dark as in it was so dark it was difficult to see the sandworm.
Yeah.
Could somebody turn the light ons, mate? Light ons? Yes, light ons. I said, I'm not changing it.
The worm was so disappointing.
That's what she said.
But yeah, there was no Spacers Guild navigators in it, so I didn't get to see.
Correct me if I'm wrong, aren't those navigators from a different book though? Aren't they from one of the later books? Isn't that a detail that Lynch took from one of the later books and put in because he thought it was cool?
I'm not sure actually. It's been ages since I've read Dune.
I've literally never read it. I've tried to once and I said, nah, life's too short, mate.
I'm pretty sure the guild are in the first book as well. Like, they're certainly mentioned a lot, but
there is a bunch of weird shit in the later books, like the Benny Telex and shit.
So is it not the case that imbibing spice turns you into a fish person? Is
Krang from the Turtles?
So yeah, that's Dune. Go see it. Do you know what? I'll talk more about it if it makes my top 10 movies.
Stay tuned, listeners.
But speaking of movies, oh wait, actually, you know what? Is this an episode of fCinebriety, the podcast in which we talk about movies?
I think it might be.
Cue the music.
Hello and welcome belatedly to an episode of that thing I just said about movies and whatnot. But speaking of movies, I have to make mention of a film I saw just last week, which is going to stay with me for quite some time. Holy shit, man. I have to talk about it now because I was thinking about this. I don't think it's going to make it in my top 10, which we will be discussing our top 10s in our end of year episode. I think it's going to sit just outside it, so I'm going to have to talk about it now. And it's a movie called Titane.
Oh, I've got that down. That's on my to-watch list is what I mean, guys.
Oh, James, you are in for a treat. Holy shit. Because... Okay, I'll start at the beginning. Titane is by French director Julia Ducournau, and I was interested in her since I saw her film Raw a few years ago. Have either of you seen Raw?
No, but I've heard about it.
I want to see it, but I don't think I'll be able to physically watch it. So
it could be a difficult one for you, actually. Yeah. But I'd never know, because you surprise me sometimes with the things you can suddenly stomach, and then other things that seem trivial to me suddenly make you queasy.
Cannibalism was one that kind of fucks me up. So
alright, okay, well, Raw is not the movie for you. There is cannibalism. But Raw is basically a movie about a young veterinary college student who, on her first day there, as part of the initiation ceremony, she has to drink blood and eat raw meat. And before this, she's vegan for all kinds of ethical reasons. And then after she does that, she can no longer consume any food except raw meat, and that leads to a craving for human flesh. Is the short, long and the short of it. But it's a great movie. The way it's shot, the way it's constructed. It's one of those movies that. The whole idea that a veterinary college would have this bizarre initiation ceremony, it's like, I love it when movies do this, and I remember seeing something similar when we were talking about the Nicolas Cage movie Pig, where it has that thing about the restaurant workers having an underground fight club. I love it when movies introduce elements like that. It's just the idea that the most mundane aspects of life have this weird, almost occult side to them. I think is a really cool thing. She's a great director, though, and one of the amazing things about that movie was just the way it was shot, the whole mood of it, and the way that the actors acted like they were almost on another planet. It's a really spellbinding movie. Not an easy movie to watch, but after I saw that, I was like, I'd be interested in seeing anything else she does. So when this movie came out, I heard that it won the Palme d'Or this year, and it was one in a long line of a tradition of Palme d'Or winners that makes 50% of people extremely angry. And I was like, okay, this should be interesting. So, in broad strokes, Titane is a movie in which, you know what, I'll give you the rundown of the first 20 minutes just real quick. So there's no major spoilers here. This all happens in the first 20 minutes of the movie, what I'm about to describe here. A young child in the back of a car is involved in a car crash, has to go to hospital, has major surgery on her cranium, which involves steel plates being placed under her as over parts of her skull. Ends up with all kinds of massive scarring. When she comes out the hospital, it appears that far from now being afraid of cars, she's developed some kind of Ballardian sexual fetish for cars. Skip forward a couple of decades, said same character is now one of those kind of dancer/models that dances on cars. Those weird fucking whatever they are, those events that like pure mad fucking car geeks go to.
Car shows.
Car shows. Is that what I'm looking for? I'm looking for car shows. Cool, thanks for keeping me right. And so she's one of those now, but unlike all the other dancers who are dancing on top of cars, she seems to very much be dancing with the cars, and she terrifies people, but also fascinates people.
I just got a new show, dancing with the cars.
As if all that wasn't loaded enough. Oh, by the way, she still bears the scar. Like, she's got heavy scarring on one side of her head that it seems to be like a source of erotica for some of her fans. If that wasn't all loaded enough, it then quickly transpires she's also a serial killer now. And her method of dispatch is a knitting needle through the ear. So that's a thing. Then about 10 minutes into the movie, she's having a shower and she hears this kind of metallic clanging. She goes outside and the metallic clanging is coming from a vintage Cadillac with this hyper-real kind of explosion flames motif painted on it. And it's vibrating and jumping up and down like it's calling her to it. She goes to it, she goes inside, and she literally fucks the car. Then what transpires
is 20 minutes of the film.
Yeah, everything I'm describing is still in the first 20 minutes. It then transpires she is pregnant by the car.
This is every bit as fucking not so sounding as I was hoping.
Then her cover is blown somewhat, and she realises has to flee because the cops are onto her for being a serial killer. In case you forgot that detail already.
Not for shagging cars.
You thought this movie couldn't get any crazier? Brace yourselves. She decides the best way to escape the dragnet that is approaching is she's noticed that there's a story in the news about a missing boy who went missing some years ago, about the age of 9 or so. He should now be a teenager. She decides she's going to pose as that teenage boy and live with his dad. So that's what she does. I won't go into the details of how she does that because that's an incredible sequence that has to be seen to be fucking believed. But when she gets there, the dad in question is the fire chief of a town, and it turns out he's also nuts because he clearly realises this what is clearly a fucking woman cannot be his son. But he looks at her and he says, "Oh no, that's my son," because he has to believe. He's so desperate now, he's just convinced himself this is his son. And that's all the first 20 minutes. I'm not kidding. That's like 20-25 minutes of this movie. And all I'll say from then on, it's like there's a large portion of the movie, like the middle act is like a bleak, almost social realist, but yet slightly surreal story in which, well, you know what, just watch it. But it is interspersed with like what are like very sort of surreal, dreamlike reconstructions of scenes from Ron Howard's Backdraft from 1991. By the time you get halfway through this movie, you're like, what the fuck is this film? What is the story in this movie? And I can tell you that the final act, hats off to Julia Ducournau, because nobody could predict where this movie is going. Nobody knows what this movie is. I actually looked up on YouTube after I watched it to see if anybody reviewed it, and literally all of them are they're almost identical titles or reviews going, what the fuck is this movie? It's a hard film to recommend to anybody because I'm not going to lie, by the time you get to the middle act, it's a fucking endurance test to sit through. But yet it's also strangely spellbinding. And at the end of it, I was like, I don't know what the fuck just happened. But the thought I keep... Do you know a few episodes ago I was talking about James Wan's Malignant and how there were so many people saying, oh, this movie's so crazy. It's the craziest movie I've seen in the cinema for years. It's almost like Julia Ducournau has said, hold my fucking Chardonnay. This is incredible. I actually, final note on this before we move back onto Doom Patrol, but after I watched it, I spent a good few hours on YouTube just watching stuff about it. And I actually watched a long interview with Julia Ducournau herself. She really seems like such a fascinating, interesting person. And when I was watching it, I was like, at some point the mask has got to slip and she's going to at least hint at, I fucking fooled you. I made a film just full of mad shit, and you're all sitting here trying to analyse it like fucking idiots. But she doesn't crack a light once, and it's incredible some of the things she has to say about some of the most insane scenes in that movie. Like, she's so sober about everything. Actually, that's one thing I will add. Just from a pure filmmaking perspective, it's so well made. There is a oneer in it, a continuous take in it. It's one of the best continuous takes I've seen in a long goddamn time, and it's near the start of the movie, within that first 20 minutes. And I was like, holy shit, that is incredible. And I was watching a video of her talking about how they did that, and I was like, wow, she is a really serious person. But one can't help but just wonder, as soon as the camera was off, did she walk out of that room and go, what a bunch of fucking idiots, can't believe they're lapping this shit up, I just made up a bunch of craziness.
Sounds great. Well, I think that brings us to the end of yet another episode
of fCinebriety.
Toodle Pip.
Toodle Pip. Doom Patrol Season 3, Episode 9, Evil Patrol. Directed once again by Rebecca Rodriguez. Written by Eric Dietl, whose previous credits on Doom Patrol include Hair Patrol, our old fave classic with the Beard Hunter. Sex Patrol, which, you know, we've talked about that before. Dumb Patrol, which was the one with the scants. Plenty comedy in this guy's Doom Patrol pedigree.
And he doesn't miss a trick in this episode.
Yeah. His comedy card never declines, as the kids might say these days. That's a thing I've seen people say on social media. Am I hip now? Will my hip card decline? Let's find out. We begin in 1917. I have to say, I loved this opening scene. I really loved that it was an intimate scene with these three characters specifically. Madame Rouge, Rita, and Shelley Byron, with their plan in the film that we all saw some episodes back. Woman petting cat, when in fact she pets a bird. It turns out Shelley is allergic to cats, and I'm like, same energy, Shelley. Me and Shelley, like that. Cats kill me, man, literally. Not in a comedy sense. Unlike the ancient Egyptians, I don't especially think they're funny. That's a reference to, was it Time Trumpet?
Very possibly.
The ancient Egyptians built so many monsters to cats just because they thought they were funny. It'll be on YouTube.
We'll put a link in the description.
Yeah. It'll all become clear if you look at the description about the thing I don't remember right now.
It's was starring what's her name?
Yeah, what's her name from Sabrina? The Ant. So what I like about this opening scene, not just that it's a treat to have these three characters together, and also just to get this wee extra bit of background about stuff that happened in 1917 before Laura DeMille began her Madame Rouge journey. But I like the way it illustrates how Rita sort of takes things very much on the face of things. And I think we sort of saw that even in some of the mid-season episodes where she's very much a productive member of the Sisterhood of Dada. Like, the stuff she does with Malcolm in their Broadway-esque performance is really all about them. It's not really about art, and that's exactly what it's what Holly calls them out on. It's like, this is just all because you're in love. And it's like, there's a sense that everything Rita does is about herself, and she sort of expects that has to be what Shelley and Laura are doing as well. It has to be about themselves, when in fact they try to explain to Rita that it's about something larger, you know, and it's not about drawing attention to Laura's metahuman abilities. It's simply about, this is how a woman becomes herself, kind of thing. I mean, I don't entirely know how the metaphors make sense in that film, but whatever.
It's Dada.
But I do think this episode does a good job, without hammering it home too obviously, of just how Rita has really been fooling herself on this journey, and how she's continuing to fool herself on this journey of vengeance. And there's some really great dialogue here that I think works as a perfect metaphor for that stuff. When he asks Rita to come up with her dance and to come up with her phrase, and she comes up with "Love me, don't look at me," and I almost feel like it's a comment on Rita wanting to be the hero of this story. She wants to be looked at as someone that can be looked up to, but also So that's where the love me comes in. But also, don't look at me too closely. Because I am not going to look at me too closely. Because if I do, I might see that that's not quite the case. I feel like there's a lot of that kind of theme going on throughout this episode. Wants to just be accepted without being analysed, essentially. Whereas this is skipping forward slightly, but it's relevant to the theme I just mentioned. Madame Rouge in this episode, she seems to have transcended her own concerns with a sort of binary proposition. Rita's binary in this moment is love me but don't look at me. It's a choice between two things, and that's how she's viewing life at the moment. And it's kind of similar to the way in which Laura DeMille's whole life was all about declaring people either weapons or not weapons. And it's sort of like in her journey later now, Laura's journey, she feels she's transcended these things. She has this line early in the episode to Rita that the things I said weren't untrue. It's just they were truths that changed over time. And it's almost like Laura feels she's transcended that kind of binary way of looking at the world. Now, where it falls down slightly is she does enlist with people who call themselves the Brotherhood of Evil, which is very absolutist. But, I do feel that's kind of part of what the writers were trying to do here. It's the same way, this other note I've got here is that the whole idea of Rita being given a new identity when she went back in time. Everybody calls her Bendy, nobody calls her Rita. And I think that's made it easier for Rita to think of herself as somebody new, to think of herself as a different person, as a stronger person, a more heroic person. But at the same time, with the inference of what I said earlier about when she comes up with that binary phrase, there's that part of her that recognises this is a front. She's recognising that she's putting the Bendy persona up front. Bendy in the front, party in the back, if you will. Wait, is that the title of this episode? Anyway. But yeah, the other note I've got here about this, before we move on to the scene at the shore in present day, I sort of feel like Rita's feud now with Madame Rouge is kind of analogous to where Niles Calder was with the Brotherhood and or with Mr. Nobody, is because even though they've not lived through the decades of hatred that Niles did with the Brotherhood, nonetheless the story transcends decades. We have to remind ourselves as well that Rita spent 30 odd years in the past, which is fucking crazy. She's looking good.
Yep.
So present day by the shore, where we pick up where we left off with the previous episode. Yeah, so we get the stuff I mentioned where Rita challenging Madame Rouge, saying you never cared about art or expression, all you cared about was influence. And Laurie having that line, that no, they were truths at the time, but I've changed, basically. Rita tells her that she's hidden the time machine, so Laura can no longer return to the past, and that Rita's intent on ending this. I am really loving Angry Rita, though. Angry, aggressive Rita is amazing. And it's really cool seeing...
Definitely not a sub.
It's really cool seeing April Bowlby flex this different muscle, because we're so used to her being so eccentric and funny, and now she's actually a little bit scary.
Although she doesn't really.
Well, I know. I mean, that is part of the thing as well. She is biting off more than she can chew here, for sure. But yeah, there's so much going on with her character. April Bowlby's a boss. She's really knocking this role out of the park entirely. I did note here what I've called plot convenience patrol. Of course, Laura has her memories back now because of meeting her subconscious.
What an oddly convenient...
That's the line I was going to mention later. The brain does have that line. It's like, what? Amnesia? What an oddly convenient symptom. It's like, alright, show, I see what you're doing. But Laura tells her, what you want I can't give you. And I love April Bowlby's delivery of what I had was taken from me by you. You took my whole life from me and I won't stop till I've ended yours. It's like, god damn. So TLDR, Laura turns into a bird, flies away. Larry has this really sad insecurity dream about not being a good enough father for his parasite. It's really horrible with Cliff and Jane laughing at him. This really upset me.
It's horrible.
Did not like it at all. Like Cliff and Jane just being arseholes.
It starts off so nice.
Yes, yeah, it starts off wholesome. They're like, you don't think we're really going to give him back to you? It's like, oh. A note I had about this, which is a thing I've only just learned after some research online. The Keegaboo thing, this thing's name is Keeg, apparently, and apparently that is a character in Gerard Way's run on Doom Patrol. So this whole thing where I was really confused about what the well, not confused, but I just didn't know what the parasite was. I couldn't remember anything from the comics that was similar to this. But apparently this is channeling things from Gerard Way's run. And the character Keeg does become, it seems like a separate character that's essentially the same persona as the negative spirit. So it looks like that's the route that they're travelling down.
Kind of figured they were building towards that type of thing anyway, the negative spirit return. Yeah. But aye, okay, so it is a separate character too.
But we learn that the parasite senses everyone's emotions, and this makes Larry all the more hypersensitive himself and paranoid about it. And he's really determined, like, this time I have to be better. It's like, oh, go daddy, Larry.
GoDaddy.com.
Alright, so we have to talk about this big scene with Vic and Silas. Holy shit, this is great. And again, this is exactly the kind of thing I'm talking about, is you could remove the context from this, just like the comic book context from this, and it holds up just as well with any of the best written drama on TV right now. And I really love, I love the cast on this show, as listeners will know by now. But one of the things I love about what they do is they treat this material exactly as seriously as it needs to be treated. And when it comes to these moments that are genuinely channeling something human and truthful, they really give it their all, and both actors in this scene are fucking incredible. And it's exactly the kind of thing, just strip away the comic book elements and just cast whoever you want in the most high profile serious drama, and take basically most of this same dialogue in an analogous real life situation, and once again you'd have the Emmy crowd going, oh yeah, it has to be this. It has to be this. Because this is saying everything. It's relevant to all the conversations we've been having about race, about all of the things that African Americans have been telling us. This is our experience, and us white motherfuckers are only just becoming cognizant of the depth of that experience. It's saying so much relevant stuff. I won't repeat myself because we already covered quite a bit in the previous episode, but it's really going into the meat of those themes in a way that's so human and so truthful. And both Joy Van Wade and the actor's name I can never remember, who plays velvety voice, just incredible.
Martian Manhunter from Smallville.
Yes, it's an incredible scene, and it's played with such dignity and such gravitas. Like some of Silas's dialogue here, when he's remembering all the previous times he's seen Vic in the hospital, that whole monologue reminded me of something Walter White would say, like when he's talking to Walt Jr. Like one of those, the moments where Walter White pretended to be human. It was like one of those moments. I think with Silas it's a bit more genuine, but he's still in a place where he thinks he can win this battle of wills in this moment. He feels he's still got the higher ground, to quote Obi-Wan Kenobi.
I have the high ground!
It's the only thing I remember about that movie. No! When he explains to Vic why he did not turn up for that football game. And this dialogue I thought was way better than the dialogue in the previous episode. Like some of the dialogue I thought in the toy store scene was a wee bit heavy-handed. This I thought was treated just perfectly, absolutely spot on. Because he doesn't say why the security guard apprehended him. He just assumes we'll understand. And he knows that Vic understands. And the omission makes it more powerful. He just says the security guard made assumptions. And he even says, I could have taken him. But what would have happened then? Black man gets belligerent when apprehended, you can fill in the blanks. And it's like, fuck man, this is devastating. And this scene does so many things. It really lets us understand Silas that bit deeper and sympathise with him, that I think a lot more than we have previously. But at the same time, if you're in Vic's situation, Vic actually gets to voice it here, and it's great. And Joy Van Wade's delivery of it is great when he says, that was your solution, but it wasn't the answer. And it's like, oh, fuck, man, this is good dialogue. Holy shit, this is good. Because, as we discussed in the previous episode, Silas's whole reaction was determined by fear. And so he wanted his son to be something indestructible that could walk the world without fear. And Vic is basically saying, but you basically made me something other than human, which isn't really a victory. And I was basically a product of your own fear. There's nothing serious about that. My favourite line that Vic gets to see here is, I am a star-lived security guard. It's like, fucking hell. I was like, holy shit, that's a great line. Because it hammers home all the stuff we were talking about in our previous episode. earlier Vic had that line to Ronnie where he said, "What's the difference between me and a cop?" And I'm like, holy shit, I'm so amazed and super glad that the writers are really channeling this stuff and making it apparent, making it blatant. They're not hiding it in comfortable language, you know? And the tail end of this, he says, "I'm the man I used to be, but my father won't look at me or even embrace me. Can't even look me in the eye. He can only think about fear. You talk about freedom. I want to walk the world as the man I was born to be." It's like, fucking hell. This is awesome. Yeah. This is like something I would have expected from Spike Lee when he was good. You know what I mean?
It's super powerful stuff. And again, how many times do we need to say it? It's in Doom Patrol.
I know.
It's in this wackadoodle show.
It's the same show that gave us the Beard Hunter.
The Werebutts.
Donkey that fucking swallowed the whole town.
And the Sex Man. Shadowy Mr. Evans.
And Nazi puppets.
Nazi puppets. And robot Brendan Fraser ripping a guy in half and using that half to beat another guy to death. This show can do it all.
Literally used a motherfucker to beat another motherfucker, which is the dream.
Oh, you want a piece of me? Oh, fucking hell.
Phil Morris is the guy that plays
Phil
Silas.
Morris, yes. I do remember looking up his name earlier and I clean forgot. It's one of those names I thought it's an easy name to remember, then I totally forgot it. Phil Morris. What a guy. Velvety voice, fuck.
Nothing minor about that dude.
Jesus Christ. Speaking of Jane's trauma, back in the underground, Jane asks Kay where the others are. Kay says she doesn't need them. She wants to feel like she did in Shelley Byron's Sweet Shop.
We all want to feel that way.
I made a note here that, is this Shelley Byron fuckery? Is that what's happened? Don't know.
Shelley Byron foggery.
Oh, hey, this guy. I guess that will be cleared up later.
It's really a pea super pun.
Fucking hell.
This is the worst episode ever.
This episode is going to get cancelled, banned forever. Jane tells her it's not that simple. You have to be wondering about what happened to the others. I can help you figure it out. And Kate has really devastating line. She says, sometimes I wonder if you understand me at all. And I was like, oh, Jane, you are off the wagon, hen. Off the wagon.
Yeah.
You're in your own private fantasy. And then we get this disturbing, distant screaming, which I did not like. No likey, don't know where it's going, and I don't like it. Make it stop. But yeah, I don't think this place is meant to be empty, muses Jane. Which is a point, because surely if Kay is cured, then surely the underground shouldn't even exist.
Yeah, it's a place where all of her defense mechanisms exist. And if they're not there, then what's going to inhabit it? Right,
surely something has to come in to fill the space. So I don't like any of this, and I don't mean don't like it as in bad job writers. I mean great job writers, because I'm terrified. But speaking of bad decisions, Madame Rouge turns up at a retirement home in Boca Raton, Florida.
Best bit of the whole episode.
Everything from here involving the brain and Monsieur Mala makes me so happy.
It's solid gold. Absolute solid gold.
The odd couple with a brain on a motorised vacuum robot thing, yeah. And a giant talking monkey.
This is ape, Alan, come on. Separate your monkeys from your apes.
Monkey.
Get it? Monkey.
This is every bit the vintage Grant Morrison TV sitcom I never knew I wanted. It's absolutely fabulous. I mean, even the whole thing with the intercom was way funnier than it had any right to be.
Is that my delivery from Taffy of the Month Club?
It's the fact that the only thing that Madame Rouge whispers is the one thing the brain hears. Did I hear someone say Brotherhood of Evil? And Monsieur Mala just his default resigned sigh at everything. Yeah.
He has had it up to fucking here.
In fact, shall we just deal with all the scenes involving them just now? And then we'll progress with the other stuff.
Yeah.
We might as well, because it hops back and forth quite erratically this episode. Rouge is eventually admitted in. And when... like, first of all, I love the fact the brain is a fucking Roomba. But he's basically telling her that they've retired from evil. He's got no real interest in evil anymore, and he absolutely fucking loves Boca Raton, Florida. Can't beat the climate, the beach, the Buccaneers. And the sign that says Boca Raton means heaven on earth. Which is especially funny if you know what Boca Raton means. It literally means mouth of a rat. But Monsieur Mala here with a blender, feigning deafness at every opportunity.
Oh, fucking amazing.
Every time he hit that blender, I was in stitches.
And he's like, when he turns it at one point, giving the whole like kind of miming,
yes, can't hear.
Thing, like, oh, fuck. Did he still have the bandolier of bullets on?
Yes,
yep.
He's got it the whole time. I actually love that about Monsieur Mala, and I love that they kept that for this show, because it's one of those things that, for sure, Grant Morrison, when they brought those characters back, absolutely certainly, it was always the case. Monsieur Mala was going to be brought back exactly as he was. Because Grant Morrison is someone who, you know, that imagery, that Cold War era imagery, Monsieur Mala is basically capitalism's nightmare of a Marxist revolutionary who just happens to be an intelligent ape. And Grant Morrison was exactly the right writer in that era to take that back and go, look how fucking ridiculous this iconography is. You know what I mean? And I love that the show is still channeling it. They've not changed it. It's like, keep the fucking bullet belt, keep everything, keep the cap.
As someone who's not read Doom Patrol, does the brain look exactly like that in the comics?
Yes.
Because it looks like it's just been taken straight off a
no,
comic
it has,
page.
yeah, it's exactly the same. Except he's not a Roomba in the comics. That's the only thing they've changed.
I was kind of looking up something about Monsieur Mala today, and I didn't realise that it's like every scene with them is like an old married couple. And
yes.
What I read today was like they are actually a couple.
I was going to mention that. In Grant Morrison's run, they actually make it that Monsieur Mala is actually in love with the brain and declares his love for the brain, and the brain returns that love. However, spoiler for a 30-year-old comic run, they finally admit their love for each other at just the moment before the brain and Monsieur Mala are killed off in Grant Morrison's run. The brain is in Robot Man's new improved body that I mentioned a couple of episodes ago, that it turns out is faulty because it has a mind of its own. As soon as Monsieur Mala and the brain go to kiss, the body explodes and kills them both. So I don't know if they'll hammer that home any further, but I do like the fact the show it's given just enough of a hint, like by presenting them as the odd couple, and obviously there's all the jokes in popular culture about the odd couple being secretly gay. So, you know, I do like that they're channeling that a wee bit. Although it is hammered home as well. Just skipping ahead a minute, when the brain goes into Robot Man's body and he's got that LP, The Brotherhood Live. And that song is basically a song of two lovers serenading each other, and it's Monsieur Mala and the brain singing to each other. So, you know, there's enough of the subtext there, I think, that it's almost text at this point.
I love that it's an album though.
Wonder how many copies it sold. But Madame Rouge is trying to explain her predicament that the Doom Patrol are out to get her, led by Rita, and the brain says, that sounds more like a Rouge problem than a brain problem. Yeah. But he's eventually convinced. He says, Mala, get me my toys. And after Mala gets over his blender shenanigans, we then get out what I've called the brain boxes. Marked deadly and not deadly. One purely just marked teleportation.
But it's scored out like something linens or something. Like,
yes.
I can't remember. It's just like, so good.
And he tells Madame Rouge that I did have a death ray, but I gave that to Gargoyax in order to make sure that all that stuff happened. And again, it's another meta line here. He says, don't ask me how I figured all that out. At that point I was like, okay writers, I won't ask.
I can only imagine the writer's room of Doom Patrol must be an absolute fucking lol fest at all times.
For sure, yeah.
And then, no, get this, Michelle Gomez is going to come in with a pure zinger here as well. It's going to be fucking dynamite. Like, imagine it in her Scottish accent. It's going to be great, guys.
Okay, so given the structure of the episode, we'll come back to the Brotherhood of Evil in a bit. But let's talk for a minute about Rita trying to turn the Doom Patrol into the Doom Patrol at the worst possible time to do so.
Everybody just wandering in. No powers. No powers.
Yeah. I love the self-elected team leader energy that Rita is given here, given all her previous talk about who's not a team leader. And trying to tell Vic, things there are no small roles, Victor. You can be stage production or whatever.
Oh, can I be stage production with Vic?
And Cliff is initially upset at Vic's change to human Vic, but purely because he offered a date with Cyborg online.
What am I supposed to do? Issue a $25 refund?
Yeah, my subconscious self let me know that was wrong, but still.
A date with Cyborg sold for $25.
Amazing.
It's a fact as well, the way this is all played for laughs, each of the characters coming in, like Larry with his fucking Hawaiian shirt and stuff like that.
Oh, I love laid back Larry energy.
This is pure sitcom gold, and it's all in the context of the whole time Rita is trying to revise her notes on the whiteboard, and like she briefly, you see her writing weird space slug, can that be a weapon? And then she scores it out. It's details like that are just chef's kiss. And eventually it's like Cliff is the only one who's kind of, as he says, ready to roll until the doorbell goes and Clara arrives. At which point Rita's like, what the fuck am I doing here? But then we get back to the pathos. Like, immediately we're back to the pathos because Clara has come all the way from Florida to Ohio. Let's remind ourselves. There's a lot about this that doesn't make add up. But anyway.
This is some Game of Thrones fast travel shit, but it's alright because it's a good show.
Yeah, it's fine. But she's worried about Cliff and the medication, and she wants to take him to a real doctor. Meanwhile, quote-unquote adult Kay has made her way to the interrogation room that we saw in the first two seasons where Niles used to talk to all the Doom Patrol about all their troubles. And this is a really nice moment between Kay and Vic, how they both sort of come to that realisation that they both feel they're now the people they were always meant to be. Like, Kay clarifies that she always felt the personas never let her come up, and she always felt because of that people up here never wanted her to come up. And it's like, no. And again, Diane Guerrero's childlike acting here, it's like, fucking hell, that's so good. It's so convincing.
Yeah. Yep, she never got to be interviewed by Niles.
Right, which is a weird thing to want, but it's just the fact that it's what all the other personas did.
Yeah, it's a very childlike thing. It's like everyone else is doing it.
Yeah,
so.
I want to do the thing everybody else is talking about, exactly.
And if everybody else gets swallowed up by a donkey, would you do that too?
Yeah, it's really truthful to a child's psychology. It's really smart writing. So she sort of felt that the personas were always keeping all of this stuff to themselves, didn't want to share it with her. That was always her perspective. And she tells Vic that Jane's now in the underground, and that's a good thing because it's better for her to be up here. And I really appreciate this moment where they sort of have that understanding that their subconsciouses are very similar, despite these two characters being chalk and cheese on top. God damn the characterization on this stupid, crazy show. But yeah, the whole idea of them having their lives determined for them, you can see how this totally makes sense as a scene. Be interesting to see what they do with these two characters going forward. In the season 4 that we're getting, yeehaw.
In Vic here, Vic doesn't need no cyborg tech on him to be a good guy.
Yeah.
Vic just Vic's all up in this, and
all he needs is a pretend Timothy Dalton voice.
Yep. Oh, tell me about your problems, Kay.
I mean, admittedly,
you bloody bastard.
It sounded more like Hugh Grant than Timothy Dalton, but whatever.
But to be fair, Joy Van Wade is putting on an American accent, trying to put on a British accent.
It's 2 layers of pretend. Yeah, I mean, Joy Van Wade is like pure Cockney in real life. So,
really?
He is. If you hear him talking in real life, he's like a proper working class Londoner.
He's more Cockney than Holly.
He is, yeah.
Oh, governor.
Through the doodah, up the gizmo, then through the doodah, got it. I fucking love Holly. When's she coming back? She better be in the finale or I'm going to kick up shit. Anyway. Yeah, so Rita decides she's leaving to find Madame Rouge, whatever the fuck the rest of these losers do. Larry seems somewhat confused about the history between Rita and Madame Rouge, and that's when Rita tells him basically 30-odd years passed, in the past. But Larry notes that from what Rita is packing for some reason, that it's all the same shit that Rita of yore would pack. Which I feel underlines the whole idea that as much as Rita has been through a lot, I've seen some things. there is also this underscore that, you know, she is still ultimately the same Rita who's putting Bendy in the front, Party in the back. But Larry tries to tell Rita change can be positive, and there's a really sweet line here where Rita says, still the same, Larry. And it's like, there's levels of denial here, Rita, but fundamentally you're all kind of the same. It's just that you've made a breakthrough in terms of your therapy. That's what you're all mistaken for changing. Is my take on this. That's my hot take. If you've done CBT, you will know what this is about.
Hey man, you ever done, never mind.
You all ever done CBT?
Gonna go all Joe Rogan there.
Clara makes an appointment for Cliff and has to insist, yes, that is his real name. Rita does have that seed of doubt that she sows in Cliff's mind about Clara not being Clara.
There was a moment where I genuinely was like, wait, is Rita Madame Rouge? And she's starting to sow dissent in the group.
I said that same note. I was like, is she Madame Rouge? But then the more it went on, I was like, no, this is Rita doing a Niles Calder. And this is where repeatedly in my notes from this point, I've written in caps, Chief Rita. Rita has basically become the chief at this point.
Cheetah, if you will.
A cheetah, yes, very good. That was Tarzan's pal cheating. No relation to Monsieur Malat, presumably. But it's that same level of she will gaslight the rest of the Doom Patrol the same way Niles Calder did, just so she can pursue her own mission of vengeance. And it's like, this is not the Rita I know and love.
But you know what? She's not far off being right.
Well, yeah, it's a swing and a miss, but only a near miss. But I really feel for Cliff in this moment, because this is pure psychological torture for Cliff. What Rita does here, when you think about it, it is a pure Niles Calder moment. She really makes Cliff doubt everything, when in this moment there was no need to actually do that, because she wasn't actually right. And it's like Cliff has that really heartfelt bit where he says, why can't something nice just happen to me? Vic has got his face back, Larry's a dad again. And then he just relents, goes, you're right, this probably is an illusion. And after what happens after this, it's like, oh, Cliff, fuck you, Rita. Hashtag fuck Rita. Cliff asks Clara, you tell me if you were a secret shapeshifter here to fuck up my life. But of course Clara's not in the room, she's upstairs, partly leaving Rory behind. Cliff cradles Rory, but who's not Rory? Before we go any further, I did enjoy the mutual what the fuck by Cliff and Clara.
Yeah.
It's a like father, like daughter moment.
Yeah, this scene is my favourite scene in all of television all year. I thought I was going to throw up because I was laughing so hard.
It's pretty magnificent.
From the moment you just like see like Madame Rouge's POV. It's just shaking. Cliff's face like
and then the wee Cliff shouts, watch out, killer baby.
CGI is amazing. Weird misshapen Michelle Gomez.
It's so cartoonish, but it's perfect for the scene. This total choreography as well of Rita and Vic like doing frying pan tennis.
Like tennis.
Yeah.
Fucking incredible. And again, it's another example of this show will never give you a quote-unquote proper hero versus villain battle. It will do something absolutely batshit like this. It's like, let's make it into frying pan baby tennis.
I want to see the ideas that get fucking binned rather than that one. Do you know what I mean? Like, just kinda...
And so many nice touches in the scene as well, like the fact Vic tries to go for the cannon. Like forgetting, oh, human now, dude. And Kay cowering under the table. And then when Madame Rouge tasers Cliff and he shuts down, and the way that Kay basically shuts down at exactly the same moment, that was such a beautiful moment. It's stuff like this. It's like the show can be so silly and so hilarious, and it still always has room to have these really artful touches. Fucking hell. God bless this show. Rita goes full chief here in the wake of this after Madame Rouge teleports away with Cliff. Starts barking orders. Vic has to go and use his laptop to find the Brotherhood's location. Which, by the way, I did make a note here. It's kind of funny that you can just Google where the Brotherhood of Evil is. Where do they live now? Ask Jeeves where the Brotherhood of Evil lives now.
Should have asked Jeeves.
Tells Larry to go get the bus, and it's like, that's the second time this season Larry has been relegated to staying with the bus.
Yeah.
So Jane has to come up to the surface for obvious reasons. but she's freaking out about what's going on in the underground, and Rita's getting very stern, saying, you can't get lost in your own head again. It's almost as if she's speaking to those critics on Reddit. We've got to move the plot along, Jane, Jesus. I quite enjoy the part where she says, the most capable person here right now is probably Cliff's daughter. When Vic comes back to the location, she just barks the word speak. It's like, fucking hell, Rita.
I know.
You've gone full Cobra Commander at this point. So Cliff, meanwhile, wakes up with his brain exposed, and the other brain welcoming him to the Sunshine State.
And where it's confirmed that you were on the ball, Craig. You clocked this plan.
I had a feeling it was coming, but to see it unfold, just absolute bliss. I love the first thing on Cliff's mind, though, is that I just left Florida, fuck me. The brain tells him he's a big fan of his design. Cliff can't really understand why he's too impressed with it, and the brain tells him that he's always been jealous of Niles's Robot Man design because, of course, he's infused with both science and magic, because Niles was a dabbler in both. Madame Rouge explains how the brain will pose as Robot Man and basically destroy the Doom Patrol from within. Madame Rouge will then be able to finish off Rita. Cliff says, well, you really are evil. To which the brain confirms she doesn't know the first thing about evil. And I've just written in caps, Mala attacks. The way Monsieur Mala just rushes is equal parts terrifying and hilarious. What the fuck? We'll just deal with the rest of that plot just now. The brain gets put in the Robot Man body, much to his delight, wheels Madame Rouge away in a gurney, and explains to her evil's a complicated thing, and it's the whole thing I was talking about earlier, that he's moved on from all of that. He's moved on from the Silver Age, essentially, where evil for evil's sake is no longer vogue.
He's got dancing to do. Right. He just wants to live his best life.
70 years ago I wanted to rule the world. No, I just want to live a life of indulgence. Do the foxtrot with the odd widow here and there. I know what I made here though, like thematically, this is Madame Rouge's own dark mirror of her own journey as she explained it to Rita, because the brain's truths have also changed over time. Because the brain is essentially still doing evil. It's just that he's no longer doing it as a mission. It's no longer with the same intent. It's just who he is. He just wants to live for the day now, basically. If he's doing evil, it's because he just naturally is evil. But there's no longer a mission to it. And in a way, it's sort of the mirror of Madame Rouge, because in the way that Madame Rouge was the mirror of Rita in the previous, at the scene at the start of the episode, because the brain is sort of presenting a more honest version of that. Like, he's doing something that Madame Rouge isn't doing. Madame Rouge is constantly trying to... There's always this idea that she's still seeking power. She's still seeking some kind of victory over everyone else. Whereas the brain is out and out saying, none of that shit matters. It's like, just grab the stuff you want and just relax, for fuck's sake. Yeah. Come to Boca Raton and relax.
Get you a robot body and dance with the widow from number 15.
Yeah. He sort of treats the concept of evil the same way that Madame Rouge treats Dada, essentially. Like, it was a useful vehicle for Laura at one point, and wanting to rule the world was a useful vehicle at one point for the brain, but now he's just too tired for that shit. And he's basically saying to Madame Rouge, you should be too tired of it as well, because it's bullshit.
He's become the true epitome of like what true evil is, though, which is ultimately true evil is just pure selfishness, and that's all
true.
The brain is now.
That's true, yeah. I think another note I made here is that it's also sort of a more frivolous reflection of the kind of genuine fatigue that Garguax experiences early in the season.
Yep.
Because the obvious difference being that, you know, the brain was always the top of the chain, and Garguax had that genuine sense of, I've just been fucked around here, whereas the brain is the one always doing the fucking around. It's just this sense of exhaustion.
Brain's down the find out part.
The find out part, yeah. The choice of location for this to be a retirement home in Florida just makes so much sense thematically, and it's also just automatically funny because it's the sun-drenched beaches of Florida. Yep. Like, it just gets so much great mileage out of the location. So yeah, that's where we get the Champs-Elysees dance scene. The brain dances. He's in seventh heaven, the brain. What a cunt. Meanwhile, the Doom Patrol, on their way in a school bus from Ohio to Florida. Again, we should just overlook the technicalities.
Just drive all night, they'll get there.
Took us about a week, but okay. Yeah, they're all squabbling. The family's falling apart, and I don't like it. Larry's freaking out because the larva's freaking out, and he's saying you're all emotionally toxic. Vic is pissed off because nobody's happy for his improved face. And Jane is all like, we'll deal with that shit later. This is about Cliff. At which point Larry has to say, actually, it's not about Cliff. Rita has a whole other mission. And that's when everybody realises, I've written on my notes here, everybody realises, ... caps, Rita called her. She could have altered the timeline to save them all this shit, but she decided to preserve her own life instead, and her own love. And again, it's sort of a larger version of what I was saying earlier with the situation with Silas. We understand Silas's motivations for what he does, but like Vic says, that's his solution, but it wasn't the answer. And as a party, you're like, okay, Rita, this was your solution. Was it the answer? I'm sorry Malcolm died. Really am. He seemed like a lovely guy. But how many other people were harmed in the process of this? What have you done, Rita? Rita, what have you done?
What she's doing is embracing selfishness and ultimately skittering towards evil herself. And what did the Sisterhood of Dada say that the eternal flagellation would do? It would show who was bad.
Right on. Yeah, Shelley Byron and co had it spot on. God damn it.
What did Michael Jackson say? He'd tell you once again who's bad.
Congratulations, James. You win the Best Joke of the Episode award.
Line I did feel really devastating here was when Rita just plain comes out and says, like, it doesn't feel at home anymore. You all feel like strangers to me, and all I want is Madame Rouge.
Much sad.
I will also say, even at this point, in this moment of complete dissolution amongst our heroes, the writers have still got time to insert Vic saying, "You lied as well, right to my face," to Larry. To which everyone says, "Enough about your face, Vic." While all that shit's going on, Kay is wandering around in the underground to the sounds of distant screaming.
The sound of the underground.
Nice. I don't like any of this. I'm not liking it. I want out of here. I want this fixed. Fix the underground. Fix the Glasgow subway.
I mean, closing at 6 o'clock on a Sunday, guys. What the
It's
fuck?
fucking ridiculous. It's the year 2021. Why are we still putting up with that crap? What is this, a third world country? Come on. Anyway.
I don't know if it's closing at 6 o'clock during COP26, but I don't know if any international delegates are getting on the Glasgow Underground to go between hotels.
I hope they are. It's the experience they deserve. Joe Biden sitting on a piss-drenched fucking seat in the Clockwork Orange.
I know, cloth seats. What the fuck?
Aye. And again, though, this fucking show, man, this whole thing, that whole montage, it turns into a montage with the dissolution on the bus, and Kay receiving this nightmare scenario in the underground. All of that is intercut with the brain dancing to Champs-Élysées. And somehow it doesn't undercut any of the tension. I don't understand how that's possible.
It's the juxtaposition. It just like makes the horror more horrible.
Yeah, it does.
Because you're constantly kind of going, ooh. Ooh.
Yeah, I think that is a large part of it.
I mean, he is dancing in the stolen body of one of our fucking favourites, so that is kind of horrifying.
That's true, yeah. Treating the body like a fucking marionette. I do also enjoy, though, none of these OAPs in Florida are even slightly perturbed by this robot body. This is all perfectly cromulent, apparently.
They've had a talking monkey and a Roomba brain for neighbours for a while.
This is the same energy of all the campers in episode 2 who, when Gargoyles entered, as soon as he told them a joke, they were all like, alright, cool. Green guy, whatever.
This guy.
And I think the only other note I've got here is that Monsieur Mala appears to be about to get rid of Madame Rouge, but we don't actually see him do so, which gave me a doubt in my mind. Is Monsieur Mala going to double-cross the brain, possibly? Or is he going to find some other use for Madame Rouge? Or is Madame Rouge simply going to escape next episode?
No one can tell. No one knows. It's a mystery. So, yeah, Kay does a scrim. Jane does a scrim.
Yeah, so what's this about? A mighty superpower scrim. I scrim, you scrim, and the bus does a flip. That's how the saying goes. When I watched this, I immediately transitioned from pissing myself at the brain dancing to immediately going, no! Actually out loud went, no! No!
That Darth Vader moment, yeah.
How does this show keep getting away with doing this to me?
You can't keep getting away with it!
Yeah, to paraphrase Jesse Pinkman.
And yeah, we're left with a lot of stuff hanging, a lot up in the air.
So that's that.
Yeah.
Doom Patrol Season 3, Episode 9, Evil Patrol. With all of that said, I am scoring this bad boy in accordance with our Mr. Robot themed scoring system that we didn't mention earlier. It's really easy to understand, and it's why we certainly don't need to keep explaining it every time.
Yep, it's based around the numbers 5 and 9, given the 5-9 hack, etc., etc. So, I mean, just like it's a standard scoring system.
Perfectly cromulent, very easy to understand. I am scoring this episode 8.55 out of 9.
I am scoring Doom Patrol Season 3, Episode 9, Evil Patrol. Would have been around an 8/8.5, but the fucking Madame Rouge baby pushes it to a 9. 5 out of 9 for me.
Fair enough.
Into it. Yeah, it's good.
Is that 7007's out of Chevron?
It's yeah, I couldn't think of one. Like I've been racking my brains for like 10 minutes.
I love the fact that we go out of our way to explain the Mr. Robot themed scoring system, then Alan just chucks it out the window.
Because Alan jumped on the bus late and just like no one gave him the memo about the scoring system.
This mutiny will not stand. The Hamilton's going to have words with you. I think we're taking it as read. That's a perfect score from Alan.
Yeah.
So there we are. Another 2 Hells a Poppin' episodes of Doom Patrol. Fun note about the word Hells a Poppin'. A few episodes ago I said I'd never say that word, and now I've never stopped saying it since.
Never stop saying that thing that you never say.
Yeah, that's a good sentence. Would he talk pretty one day?
Our next episode, over here at fCinebriety Towers, we'll be discussing the finale of Doom Patrol Season 3, so it's going to be a shorter episode. It's just one episode that we'll be discussing. And then subsequently after that, it's going to be our end-of-year Christmas feast episode.
Yep.
So stay tuned.
That is going to be basically a compendium of all our top 10s of cultural phenomena we've all enjoyed over the last year. So if that sounds like your bag, we James and I did this last year and we had a lot of fun with it, and I feel like I'm going to go out on a limb and say I feel like we're slightly better at this now.
Are you, though? Really?
It's still not a professional podcast, but we're a bit better at it now. And with the added input of Alan, I think we can make a feast out of this end of year episode. And if you're in the market for around Christmas, you like a wee cozy podcast to listen to, just summing up some of the year's cultural highlights. Hopefully, we can provide you with some minimal entertainment. That's a massive promise.
Yep, last year we made this slightly ill-advised decision to make our end-of-year feast also be half a Fargo Season 4 wrap-up, so it was a very long episode.
Well, if you recall, I did advise against that.
I was like, I'm sure it'll be fine.
So yeah, no such mistake this year. It will be purely an end-of-year listathon feast, and hopefully have a few laughs, some festive carry-on, some good banter, and we'll maybe discuss a wee bit about where we're going in the forthcoming year, and just generally have a good festive time. So I know for me personally, when it comes round to Christmas, I do like to listen to some end-of-year podcasts, like the podcasts I'm quite loyal to. I do quite look forward to their end-of-year podcast. I just find it quite a comforting thing. So if we can, in any tiny way, contribute to that for any of you out there, we'll be happy to do so. So yeah, stick with us.
God blesses everyone.
In the meantime, if you like what we're doing with Doom Patrol, if you've listened to any of our other podcasts, just generally if you like what you're hearing, we sure would appreciate it if you told a friend, spread the word, helped get the word out there.
Subcon, like.
Spread the dada bird.
The Hamiltron, our resident AI, will, as per usual, during the credits, give you all our places to visit on the internet.
In her usual personable style. Alright, so in the meantime, I think that wraps it up for this ep. How's everybody's drink looking?
After being seriously berated by you, Craig, about drinking my beer out of a bottle, I'm drinking from a glass. Having poured it from a bottle into said receptacle.
And how optimistic is that glass looking now?
Well, I wouldn't say it's half empty. How's your wine looking there, Craig?
My wine is literally causing me to whine on account of it being Merlot, and that Merlot has gotten Merloter in volume to the point where it is now currently somewhere around 50% down the vessel in which it was sealed, or to phrase it another way, that is half the bottle. Toodle pip.
Toodle pip.
Aux Champs-Élysées, aux Champs-Élysées, au soleil sous la
fCinebriety, episode 28, Bendy in the front, Party in the back, was conceived by Craig Woods, Alan Todd, and James Hamilton, edited by James Hamilton, and is a production of Half the Bottle. The theme music is Colossal Estates by Errors, available on Rock Action Records. This episode was not sponsored by GoDaddy.com. Come visit us at facebook.com/fCinebriety podcast, on Twitter at fCinebriety on Instagram at fCinebriety, and search YouTube for fCinebriety podcast. Craig works very hard on our fCinebriety Jukebox playlist, featuring all the music referenced on the show, so go check out the link in the description. And remember, Boca Raton means heaven on earth.
Alan, are you still with us, you frozen? Don't freeze, you bloody bastard!
And cut.
Right, good ep.
Good ep.
Those guys know a lot about
I mean cut as in stop
Julia
recording.
Ducournau and her apparent insanity. Oh, and also June.
Oh, sorry. I meant when I said cut, I meant stop recording. But then instead of stopping recording, I muted myself on Skype.
This one's
you carried on talking.
This one's for the outtakes. Because at that moment, the brain is in Mr. Robot. Mr. Robot.
Hello, friend.
It's a Freudian slip and a half. It's in Christian Slater's body.
And then, subsequently, whatever the fuck word I meant to say there, subsequently after that, consecutively, I fucking lost what I was saying. I'll start that again.
Adverbally. Insert adverb.
Too much hilarity, guys. This is a serious podcast.
It's a serious philosophical podcast.